to discuss tailored investment opportunities and discover why Ghana's real estate market is one of the most promising in Africa.
Whether you're looking for an investment property, a home away from home, or a hotel investment, DevTraco Plus offer diverse options designed to grow your wealth.
Meet with us in Washington, D.C. from the 1st of October to the 7th of October 2025, and in New York City as well as Toronto, Canada, from the 8th of October to the 12th of October. We will also be in London from the 10th of November to the 17th of November 2025.
Join us this October and November in your city
to explore rewarding investment opportunities in Ghana.
Meet under very demanding times, and our theme is also demanding. Africa's response to tariff wars, building a prosperous, integrated continent beyond aid. Now, this is not just another gathering to rehearse the old challenges. It is a dialogue at a moment when the world is changing shape. Protectionism is redrawing trade. Donor fatigue is redrawing aid. And Africa must decide whether it will remain a bystander or step forward as a builder of its own destiny. Whenever the tides change, you either change with it or you get swallowed by it. The forum held on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly presses us to rethink Africa's place in the world, not as recipients of benevolence, but as negotiators, as innovators, as producers of value, and a united market of 1.5 billion people. This year brings new ideas. For example, a $1 a day initiative, very ambitious, but something that, if harnessed, can deliver the mobilization of millions of Africans and members of the global diaspora to fund critical infrastructure on the continent. We must face the facts. Intra-African trade still hovers just around 15 to 18%. Our global economic partnerships expose us to shocks we do not control. And aid dependency continues to blunt our competitive edge. But in all of this, there still remain lots of opportunities. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement and area, the spending power of 400 million strong middle class, and the energy of Africa's youth and diaspora. These represent the levers of change. With that, I welcome you all to Global Africa Forum 2025. We'll take a 2-minute message from our sponsors, DevTraco and Golden Coast Developers, after which we'll welcome the Executive Director of Africa Prosperity Network, Nanajo Hackman, to deliver a welcome address.
This October and November, DevTraco Plus is bringing Ghana's most exciting real estate opportunities straight to you in Washington, D.C., New York City, Toronto, and London. Book a meeting with our team to discuss tailored investment opportunities and discover why Ghana's real estate market is one of the most Plus is bringing Ghana's most exciting real estate opportunities straight to you in Washington, D.C., New York City, Toronto, and London. Book a meeting with our team to discuss tailored investment opportunities and discover why Ghana's real estate market is one of the most promising in Africa.
Whether you're looking for an investment property, a home away from home, or a hotel investment, DevTraco Plus offer diverse options designed to grow your wealth.
Meet with us in Washington, D.C. from the 1st of October to the 7th of October 2025, and in New York City as well as Toronto, Canada, from the 8th of October to the 12th of October. We will also be in London from the 10th of November to the 17th of November 2025.
Join us this October and November in your city
to explore rewarding investment opportunities in Ghana. Opportunities and discover why Ghana's real estate market.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause, please welcome Nana Adjoa Hackman, Executive Director of the Africa Prosperity Network, to deliver an opening remark.
Thank you, Kweku Nshiradu, for setting the ball rolling. Excellencies, distinguished guests, congressmen and women joining us, esteemed leaders from both the public and private sectors, partners from the Africa-America Institute and KRL International, our friends from the media, global Africans, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to you all, and a most warm and hearty welcome to the 3rd Global Africa Forum. Whether you're joining us here in the room or online, we're very pleased to have you. Let me begin by remembering a giant of Africa, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, whose 116th birthday we marked yesterday, September 21st. Incidentally, back home in Ghana, today is actually a holiday where we're marking the celebration of that great stalwart of Africa. Nkrumah reminded us that divided we are weak, but united, Africa could become one of the greatest forces for good in the world. That truth is why we are here today, because Africa's strength lies in our unity. The Africa Prosperity Network was born from this same conviction. The idea came to our founder, Gabi Asare-Otredako, in Davos in January of 2020, just as the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, was coming into effect. COVID-19 delayed the start. Some of you will recall that, but it did not stop the vision. From the beginning, our mission has been clear. Africa can only achieve real transformation through economic integration, working as one market, one family, one community. But this cannot be left to governments alone. It needs urgency, it needs ownership, and it needs the energy of our private sector, working hand in hand with political and institutional leaders. That is why in January of 2023, we launched the Africa Prosperity Dialogues in Ghana, under the patronage of the Presidency of Ghana, with our partners, the AfCFTA Secretariat, the African Development Bank, AFDB, the Arab Bank for Development in Africa, BADEA, the Afro-Exim Bank, and others. We also host the annual Africa Prosperity Champions Awards and Presidential Gala Dinner to celebrate those offering exceptional leadership in their respective areas of endeavor. Again, we also host high-level leadership breakfast meetings of heads of state and business executives at the Africa Union Mid-Year Coordination Summit, moving from country to country so that the African people and their leaders in business, politics, and institutions can, in the words of our founder, think together, plan together, and act together in delivering this exciting single market of 1.5 billion citizens. The most recent one was held in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea. But Africa's future is not only shaped on the continent. It must also be shaped with the scores of millions of Africans and friends of Africa around the world. That is the reason for the Global Africa Forum. right here in New York, right here at Denton's. And so we thank Denton's, the world's largest law firm, for always opening your doors to us, and our core partners here, the Africa American Institute, AAI. Thank you, Crystal Jackson, I see you. Thank you, Felicia, also, Chairperson and CEO of AAI, respectively, for your wonderful partnership and for that beautiful gala dinner last night. It was wonderful. Thank you also for KRL and Riva Livingston. We appreciate you. This forum has quickly become our main Out of Africa platform on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly to bring Africa's global family together. You are here because you are true members of that family in our efforts to build a prosperous, borderless Africa. This year, we meet under the theme, Africa's Response to Tariff Wars, Building a Prosperous Integrated Continent Beyond Aid. Over the course of today, business, political, institutional, and thought leaders will reflect on 4 priorities. 1, how Africa can replace declining aid with investment, especially in manufacturing, infrastructure, and trade. 2, how to make Africa more resilient to tariffs by at least doubling intra-African trade over the next decade. The AfCFTA reports that this is already underway, intra-African trade having grown by over 12% in 2024, reaching over $220 billion US. So the challenge is, how do we sustain this and how do we keep growing this? 3, how to rethink US-Africa relations to focus more on investment and trade and less on aid. 4, how to connect the resourceful African diaspora more directly to this journey, making their contributions not only a moral obligation, but also a profitable investment for them in Africa's future. To our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, Africa needs you. The dignity of every person of African descent is tied to the destiny of Africa. If Africa rises, we all rise. To quote Nkrumah again, if I'm allowed, I am African not because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me. Africa has the youngest population in the world, the fastest growing middle class, and a consumer market about to reach $2.5 trillion by 2030. This is a time to invest your skills, your resources, and your networks in Africa's growth. The timing of our theme is also critical. With the end of AGOA, generally African goods no longer enter the US duty-free. Instead, the minimum tariff is now 15%. This is a wake-up call. It tells us that we cannot remain dependent on selling raw materials, that corridors like Lobito must no longer follow the colonial path of extraction and export. Instead, they must power integration, industrialization, and trade within Africa. This is also a message to global investors. Africa is building a single market. The smart move is to set up industries there and benefit directly from AfCFTA's protocols on free trade. So why must we act now? Because global disruptions, from tariff wars to climate change, are shaking the foundations of our economies. But we have the power to respond. Imagine if 50 million Africans and friends of Africa each invested just $1 a day into a fund to build Africa's roads, rails, ports, energy, and digital networks. Already, Africans in the diaspora send home nearly $100 billion a year to their families, etc. The potential to do more is there. We could begin to close our $100 billion annual infrastructure gap. This is possible. As Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma said when launching Agenda 2063, we can't build the Africa we want. As we gather here in New York, let us also remember our partners in Europe, the Rebranding Africa Forum. Their 11th edition, under the theme AAI's Challenges and Opportunities for Africa, will take place in Brussels next month. Together, our 2 platforms connect Africa's family in the Americas and in Europe, to the urgent task of building Africa's single market. Later today at this forum, we will launch Africa Prosperity Dialogues 2026 in the United States. I'll end by urging you all to join us in Accra in February of 2026 to continue these conversations, knowing that Africa will shine brightest when we, Africa and Global Africa, in partnership with all friends of Africa, pool our resources and our will to build the prosperous, integrated continent that we know not only want, but truly deserve. Once again, welcome to Global Africa Forum 2025, and I wish us all a productive forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nana Joa Hakman. I'd like to thank Nanajwa for those rousing words, and it puts a lot of things in perspective. Please allow me to acknowledge the presence of Amani Aswa, who is with the Africa Business Council, one of our very key partners. Thank you for joining us. And I'm really looking forward to the speech by Honorable Mohammed Abu Eleni, who is the chairman and founder of Cleopatra Group. It was very refreshing listening to you at the last Africa Prosperity Dialogues. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our next speaker. Thank you. You're welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Mohammed Abu Eleni. I am from Egypt. I am the Vice President of Egyptian Parliament and also the President of Euromed Parliament. I'm really glad today to participate in such a great meeting, especially when we talk about Africa. Africa in my blood, Africa in my brain, and I'm really proud of what's happening now in the international market about the big awareness from all the most developing country about Africa. I have been held a lot of meetings in Russia, in Japan, in Tokyo, in Europe, and also in Egypt, talking about Africa and the potential of Africa. And the time that I'm so proud that today, all the African leaders and all the African institutions, all the African business community are talking about the potential of Africa with another brain, with another vision. This is what we are going to talk today, and this is what I wish to understand my experience as a businessman, which has more than experience in many sectors, in industry, in agriculture, in tourism, in football, in sports, in real estate, in a lot of other activity, which I'm so proud to make a big achievement in Egypt, extended also to the Arabic countries. Indeed, today, when we talk about what's happening in Africa, of course, I know that there's a big awareness about what happened here in the United States from the President Trump when he changed the tariff. And everybody in Africa is so aware that's happening, and maybe it's going to affect his exportation to the United States. And this is we're reluctant also his development and exportation outside. But in studying the number, I see that it's not a big effect. It's true. What we talk about all Africa doesn't represent even 1% of the total exportation to United States. What I want to say that Africa is more strong. Africa has a big potential. Africa, yesterday we have a forum, also a very important conference, which will talk about the Africa potential, which we can develop and can also make a joint venture, can also change the idea of the aids coming from outside to investment to be win-win. How to make these one things? And I think the first decision is to draw our new vision. This is very important for any direct, for the FTA. It's very important that the investors come to see that this continent is connected together. And when you discuss about finance, or Africa potential for mineral, or Africa potential for gas, or Africa potential for renewable energy, or for all the this kind of minerals, which is represent a big importance issue for the most and smart modern industries, I think is a time to talk globally. And this is one of the tasks for the president, all the president and African Union has to see a new way of discussion, not to talk each country to the other in Europe or China or America. No, I believe the potential of 54 different countries has to draw the new vision and also has to talk globally. When I mean globally is when you discuss about terms of finance or terms of investment or terms of exportation of raw material. I think you have to put some limitation and some terms with our partner. Now, the big tension of all these developing countries to come here to Africa to take the gold or take diamond or cobalt or lithium or manganese or copper or all these things is rare material now, and it has a big issue for the modern industry. Is representing a big part of component and the pricing. And the pricing with the raw material doesn't represent the real value. Maybe they added 20 or 50 or 100 times for the raw material value. I believe that the first issue now, as we understand before, so I give you some experience of what happened before. Even until now, when you go to have a borrow money from outside to Africa, they say there is Paris Club. The Paris Club is the one which give you a certificate that you can borrow, you can have money, you can, or you have a problem, or have a limitation of to talk about the guarantee. But today, what about Africa? Is not the time to talk about Africa Club for finance? This is the first thing which I want to talk. Africa Club for Finance is calling all the African leaders to say, okay, we are going to ask for special terms for developing our continent. And to do this, we need to talk how to develop and how to give the privilege to the foreign direct investors. We don't need, as you say here, we don't need help, we don't need aid, but we need investors to come with the technology, with the know-how, come with the special terms to develop country, come to use our youth people, which represent the continent. How to make this, of course, we need education, we need skill in our youth people. How to make this skill, we need multi-international, the multinational companies, the industries comes to invest in Africa, to make some industry in Africa. So in this case, if it's happening with a special terms, with a special facility, with the encouragement of the government and also support legislation to support this foreign direct investment, they can come to Africa, use the raw material Africa, realize the added value for the raw material, right one, and in the meantime, educate and learn and build the skills of the African human sources. In the same time, we are going to start to talk about Africa export, and the Africa exportation to all the other countries already has added value. So the African product start to appear in the international market. Of course, to have a legislation which encourage the climb of the investment means that the infrastructure is there, specialized industrial development. They make a complete city only for a specialized industrial product company to start about your map, investment map, where you locate these industries, where can be located in each country, and what is the encouragement of the government which has to finance this with special terms of financing. This is a very important, which has to be globally discussed with the financing institution outside. I believe reach with the sources, which was among the past 10 years, you see how it's more than 1,000 catalyst of technology and know-how. This is very important in order to transfer a lot of things and to give the knowledge to the other people. How many universities? I just gave you an example of Egypt. Egypt has been increased the number of universities globally are a connection, but also in North America. Indeed, I have a lot to talk and a lot of ideas to discuss with you, but I'm proud to be African. I'm proud all of you, and I have to go now because we have a very, very important meeting in the United Nations. It is a declaration of the Palestinian state. This is a very important issue. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope next meeting is going to be in Egypt, and we celebrate more and more. Thank you. All the best. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. A round of applause for the Honorable. Thank you very much. It's evident that this meeting is going to be one that will have us being courageous, that we can speak with candor and with conviction. Because the work we're starting here will feed directly into what we're hoping that truly stands level with its peers and takes its place in the world. Because frankly, it doesn't still make sense to me how you would have 3/4 of all natural resources and some of the smartest people on the earth and not be prosperous. And that changes from what we do here. Our next speaker is Congresswoman for Florida, a Democrat, a top Democrat who is on the MENA subcommittee, as well as the Africa subcommittee. I can't think of anyone better to speak at this point. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Sheila Sheffilis McCormick.
State of Florida. I do serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee. My subcommittee, where I am the ranking member, is Middle East and Northern Africa. And I also am on the subcommittee for Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. The reason I bring this up because I think that even how we divide it seems a little bit ridiculous, right? And so I'm proud to be on both because we can give a perspective of the entire continent of Africa instead of slicing it, which I think we're redefining what that really is at this moment. In addition to redefining how we see it as a continent as one, it actually takes more than lip service. I always tell my colleagues. Many of the times you'll hear people talk about, well, we want to move our relationships from trade, from aid to trade. And when they say this to me, I always say to them, well, if that's the case, why haven't we then tariffs going on over and over again? And I always warn people of that because they have to know the implementation, the implications of that. When you have an opportunity to actually do business with Africa, to do well with Africa, but instead you turn around and try to talk about tariffs that will actually break up our relationships and actually make it worse for us, there are consequences for that. And so what we're doing here in New York, what we're doing in Congress is really fighting to make sure that we see Africa in a different light, but more so we can have policies and trade policies that will allow us not just to compete, but to have a long, thriving relationship. And so because of that, one of the biggest things we've done is wrote a letter to Rubio with my colleagues, and we stress the importance of actually extending AGOA. We stress to them to let them know that AGOA itself actually created jobs in the United States, in and if Africa. AGOA was a mutually beneficial trade policy that needed to be extended. So many people who looked at it and said, well, Africa is the future, we keep telling them that no, Africa is today and it is now. And so we're looking to push more policies that not just leverage our relationships through trade, but also the remittances that are going into Africa. We know that there are billions of dollars that come from the United States into Africa. We could leverage those relationships and that funding to make sure that capital is actually present when we look for people who are looking to actually invest in Africa, who are looking to grow businesses. But one of the biggest things that I've actually noticed as we go around throughout the entire country, we are noticing more people realize that Africa is the now also. More people are wanting to invest. More people are looking for vehicles and matching with different countries in Africa to realize that they can grow their economic potential and not just the idea of one day. That one day could be today. And so we're so proud to be here and tell you about the work that we're doing, but we're even prouder that we're all coming together and talking about what will be that policy, how do we redefine it, but most importantly, how do we actually establish a mutually respectful relationship with Africa, one that's predicated on making sure that Africa can rise to its economic global place in this whole world because of its resources and its talents. So I thank you so much for being here today and letting you know that you definitely have a partner and a fighter in Congress. If there's anything we can do for your office, please reach out to us. I also am the chairwoman for the Global Energy Conference, which we have with the Brain Trust and the Congressional Black Caucus, where we're looking at finding different ways to participate more in Africa, specifically when it's not just extraction, but we're looking at processing, we're looking at jobs, we're looking at maximizing the growth of Africa. So now when we come to the table, we're actually negotiating a posture of trying to be competitive. Not just saying don't do business with China, but we're saying we're actually a better partner than China. And that's a key distinction that I do not believe we have done yet. So thank you so much for having us here today. Thank you for being a part of the solution that we're bringing to the United States and Africa. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And I get a sense that the Congresswoman's reminding us that we have an opportunity to transform these tariff shocks into integration opportunities, where the diaspora, private sector, and governments can ensure that we're harnessing the opportunity that this hurdle presents us. We're going to get into a panel discussion which encapsulates some of what has been said in these three opening speeches. And the panel will be discussing the topic, Building a Prosperous Continent Beyond Aid, Africa's Response to the Trade Wars. And ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome our moderator in the person of Joanna LeBlanc, who is a nationally recognized expert in national security, law, and foreign relations, and a sought-after commentator on Al Jazeera, BBC, and other TV networks across the rhetorical African continent. As partner and head of global public policy at Adomi Advisory Group, she advises African governments and businesses on critical minerals, carbon markets, trade facilitation, and strategic communications. Joanna also teaches American foreign policy and AfCFTA at Howard University, and recently co-led the signing of a historic MOU between the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat and the National Bar Association. She holds a Doctor of Jurisprudence, a Master's of Laws in National Security and U.S. Foreign Relations from George Washington University, as well as additional Master's and Bachelor degrees. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you your moderator. So you can call your panel. Okay.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. It is truly an exciting day to be here during the UN General Assembly to discuss the future of our continent and to discuss issues happening, trade-related issues happening at this moment, at this time. So friends, dignitaries, and esteemed guests, again, welcome to this important conversation on building a prosperous continent beyond aid, Africa's response to trade wars. As we gather today, it is essential that we put this conversation into context in light of the global reality. Okay, the world is experiencing, as many of the previous speakers indicated, heightened protectionist and isolationist policies, tariff wars, tightened financial markets, and fractured supply chains that are defining the nature of global trade. Again, this backdrop, Africa cannot be a bystander. Okay, I think, again, many of the previous speakers made that very clear. The African Continental Free Trade Area, which I'm a huge champion of, has a potential of lifting, and I applaud the leaders on the continent. This is not just an agreement, but a framework that will chart a path of self-reliance and prosperity beyond aid. So the question before us today is, how do we turn this promise into actual reality? And before our discussion, I'd like to invite our distinguished panelists to the stage, and then they will introduce themselves, because it's important that we have our experts from across the continent and even here in the US to be a part of this dialogue. So first off, I would like to have join us on stage Her Excellency Amani Asfour. After I call each of the panelists, then we'll go back and have them introduce themselves. Next up, we have Joyce Montagari, who is a special advisor, legal advisor rather, to the President of the Republic of Ghana. Please. Next up, we have Amin Idris Abdoum, who is the Director of Infrastructure, Industrialization, Trade, and Economy at UADA NEPAD. And last, we have Ms. One second. Next, we have Ibrahima Saidu Guba, who is the CEO for Partnership for Digital and Access in Africa. Last but not least, we have Vaimela, who is with the Shelter Afrique Development Bank. Thank you so much for being here. So before we start this important conversation, Your Excellency, tell us about yourself.
So thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here at this very important forum. So I am Dr. Amani Asfour, President for the Africa Business Council. And the Africa Business Council is established by the heads of states to be the voice of the African private sector. It's established within the same decision summit of establishing the AfCFTA. So our role is really about how to implement the AfCFTA and how to empower the African private sector. I am also member for the advisory board for the Africa Prosperity Network. Glad to be here, which is organizing this very important Global Africa Forum. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joyce Ba Mukhtari, and pardon her pronunciation of it, it's pretty straightforward. I'm a lawyer with over 20 years experience, an expert in international maritime trade law. I'm delighted to be here this afternoon because I believe that every conversation that has to do with Africa is one that I consider very, very important. And I'm sure that the President himself would have been happy to be here with you this afternoon, but I'm sure you can tell that there are many other very, very important meetings and crucial decisions being made currently at the UN ongoing proceedings. So without further ado, I'm looking forward to this conversation. And I do hope that we'll continue to have engaging conversations that present a more positive outlook as we discuss Africa and our prospects under AfCFTA in the future. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Joyce. And again, congratulations on your new position. We wish you enormous success. Next, Amin.
Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Amin Idris Adoum, and I'm the Director for Infrastructures, Industrialization, Trade and Regional Integration at the African Union Development Agency. I'm also a lecturer at the University of Alexandria in Egypt and the National School of Public Administration in Chad, and I think I'm also an activist. Somehow I would say I'm a Pan-Africanist. So happy to be here for this important conversation. I'm an economist by training, that one, so we're going to speak a little bit about how we can actually move, not just move the needles, but how to get things actually done with regard to trade and industrialization in the continent. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Ibrahima, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ibrahima Gimba Saidu. I'm incumbent CEO of the Partnership for Digital Access in Africa. Prior to that, I'm an engineer by training in satellite telecommunications. I was the director of the strategy of Intelsat, which was the largest satellite organization in the world. And I was a senior vice president of the European Société Européenne de Satellite out of Luxembourg. And prior to this position, I was minister in my home country of Niger in charge of digital transformation. I left after a coup that took place recently. And so since then, I joined Partnership for Digital Access in Africa, which goal is to work with the continent to try to get us to have 1 billion people connected to the internet by 2030. Thank you very much.
Excellent, excellent. Last, Vamala.
So hi everyone, I'm Vimala Poliga de Turan. So I work at Shelter Africa Development Bank. So I have a background in law, finance and business management. So Shelter Africa Development Bank is a multilateral development bank, having its mandate from the Africa Union, specifically on driving housing, affordable housing, urbanization and planning on the continent. So we have our shareholders, our member states, and we have 2 African institutions as shareholders, Africa Development Bank and Africa Re. Very passionate about Africa. I'm African, proud to be African. And I have 2 kids. And I think, as we do is the first thing we say, where is my children going to be studying? And the first thing we see in Africa is abroad. So I don't have the money to send my kids to the US. So I say, let me fix Africa. And I think the diversity of this panel shows that we are all passionate and we are going to fix Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So as you can see, the brilliance of this panel lies not only in the diversity disciplines represented, we're talking about finance, trade, law, banking, governance, infrastructure, and so on, but also the depth of experience each of the panelists here bring to this conversation and also to this historic moment on the African continent. So before, the first question I would like us to focus on is finance. I was just in Algeria for the Intra-Africa Trade Fair organized by AfriEximBank, along with my sister here, Her Excellency, and I see some other faces that were also in Algeria. And one of the biggest, one of the questions that come up all the time is, the financing, right? People have great ideas, they want to do business. How do they access financing? So, and also finance is the oxygen of trade. So to you, Amin, I would like to hear from your perspective. Yes, again, we know that finance is the oxygen of trade, yet affordable capital is still a bit elusive. Africa received over $92 billion in remittances from the diaspora, accounting for more than 5% of the continent's GDP, a powerful reminder that resources exist but are often underutilized. I mean, how can the African Continental Free Trade Area, and for the purpose of this conversation, we will use the AfCFTA, right? How can the AfCFTA be leveraged to channel these flows and to mobilize innovative financing mechanisms such as blended finance, diaspora bonds, and sovereign wealth funds to fuel industrialization and reduce reliance on external aid?
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me start maybe by putting into perspective some of the numbers that we see around with regard to remittance, for example. Yeah, we all keep saying that there are about $90 billion of remittance that come into Africa every year. But the interesting part of this number, and we have actually shown that a few years ago with the Africa Institute for Remittance, which is an African Union agency that I had the privilege at one stage actually to support, we have shown that about 80% to 90% of the remittances don't go to productive investments. They usually go into supporting households, education, people getting food, medicine, and so on and so forth. And that's actually is, for me, it's a number that we don't really speak much about it. We have experiments actually in Nigeria and in Kenya in which we have actually seen where if the right, I would say, regulations are being put in place, and Rwanda is another example, by the way, and then there is Ethiopia, I should actually put the numbers. Remittance can serve to support industrialization and productive actually investments, but that's not actually a general case, only few examples. So as we are right now, does the remittance really help to I would say, to close the gap of financing development and financing industrializations in Africa? No, definitely no. Remittance basically support actually people daily life. Why we can actually do much better. Now, let's go back to your very specific question. What can we do in the context of the AfCFTA? I think there is a need for a macroeconomic reform, and that would start basically from our central banks. When you look at actually the way our central banks operate, most of our central banks in Africa, the Central Bank of Ghana or Central Bank of Ethiopia or Central Bank of the Central African countries, which is the CFA or Nigeria, all our central banks do only one thing, which is managing inflation, basically. That's the only monetary policy they put in place. But the problem is that they don't manage inflation that is being generated, I would say, indigenously, which is coming from within. This inflation is coming from outside. Why? Because we are net importers of energy. Do we produce energy? Number one. We are net importers, actually, of food. Do we produce food? And of course, the costs of the transport, all of them actually being put together. You add energy, you add actually cost of transport, you add the cost of the food. You import inflation basically from the US, from Asia, from Europe, from all over the place. So, and then you pretend that you want to keep inflation at an affordable level. You are not actually keeping inflation. You are adjusting the prices to the inflation that is coming from abroad. That's exactly what our central banks do. So therefore, by doing so, you are not supporting actually those who have savings, who actually can save money to save, because you are keeping all the ratio quite low. So why would I go and put my money into a bank account, for savings, when actually the interest rate that will come because central bank try to manage inflation is just 1%. I rather actually to try to find another productive investment for me. So we don't have enough savings. Unless we have enough savings, we can't actually finance our economies ourselves. So we rely actually on grants, support coming from outside, and that money is never going to be enough. So I can actually go long and long and long, but I would prefer to keep it short for now, and I will come back to this point later. Thank you.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Excellent for that in-depth explanation. You see, this is what happens when you have experts in the room. They don't just like say a few words, they go deep into the analysis. That's what we like. Thank you so much for that. But let's be mindful of time, ladies and gentlemen, 2 minutes. But in any event, I would like to move on to the next topic, which is digital trade. And I think that the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat has done an incredible job at getting the protocol on digital trade on the books. And I think also it's another transformative aspect of the AfCFTA. We know that trade today is as much about bandwidth as it is about borders. The African digital economy is projected to reach roughly $180 million by 2025. But without regulatory guardrails, this could potentially risk, there could be risk involved. Ibrahima, I'm interested to hear from you as an expert in this area. What governance frameworks are needed to ensure inclusivity, data protection, sovereignty, and bridge the digital divide that all Africans can benefit from the digital future?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, let me maybe put it from this particular angle. I mean, the way it's even CFTA operate is almost like a sort of carpooling approach that I would like to use, to address this. Why carpooling? Because when you carpool, you make sure that you go in one direction. And it's important. When you carpool, you can go in different directions. So it's important for the continent to have that sort of one direction. When you carpool, you also create synergy because you optimize your resources. You use one car and not 10, and then which is important because you're trying to aggregate what you have. Third, when you carpool, you also have an opportunity, let's say, to align, to chit-chat, to make sure that you know what is happening. So that's how that's the approach that I would like to use for this, because when you talk about even digitalization on the continent, today one of our biggest problems is that it's fragmented. Africa is not a single market, and that's what digitalization can help us do. So how can we then do it in a smart way? Because we have an opportunity to leapfrog here. How can we, instead of just discussing that, let's say, from a sort of PowerPoint perspective, how can you use that to address our challenges or our opportunities? I.e., let's look at digitalization, even the payment, etc., from, for example, some particular use cases, healthcare. How can that be leveraged and be a sort of even economic platform for them? We have on average 1 doctor per 8,000 inhabitants in Africa. I'm from Niger, as I say, I was the minister in charge of digitalization. We had in Niger 1 doctor per 23,000 inhabitants. In South Sudan, it's 1 by 66,000. So that's just one case. You can go on with education, etc. So that's how I think we can do it. And then that's where we need to have that sort of harmonization in terms of policies. The way we are addressing it today, again, we're trying to get people to come up with, how should I put it, maybe terms and conditions on something that they do not even anticipate, that they do not understand. What is happening is new. We need to leapfrog on technology. We're talking about AI here. What does it mean? And then when we do that, we need to look at infrastructure, so the data centers. Instead of having, everybody will be talking about sovereign data centers. And for most people, they want to have it in their country, right? So we want to do things together as Africa, but it has to start in my country. If it's not in my country, then you know what? I'm going to drive my... So I think we need to have that, really carpooling. What countries have some sort of comparative advantage? How can we have that single market, have the proper data centers deployed, proper energy, because data center has to come with energy, so we need to align those. And then how can we make it with a forward, approach? Because again, that's, in my view, how we can make it happen. But we have to deregulate more than regulate, because we don't know what we're doing. So let's get things done. We have the smartest people, the youngest population. Niger, again, median age is 15. So half of the population is under 15 years old. And then it's people who are 70 or 80 who want to regulate that. It just doesn't make sense. Let that happen. And I'll stop here. I mean, again, I don't want to abuse the time, but that's the perspective I would like to give. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. Vaimala, if goods are the body of trade, then payments are certainly the bloodstream. Yet today, African traders face some of the highest transaction costs when it comes to intra-Africa trade, averaging 30 to 40% higher than global benchmarks. So I want to hear from you, how can reforms like PAPS and the fintech innovations be scaled to unclog these arteries and accelerate the free flow of intra-African trade?
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you can hear me. So I think if we want the AfCFTA to succeed, we just need to make finance flow differently on the continent. So at ChefDB, okay. I'm from Africa. I don't know how to use those things, but okay. So at ChefDB, what we see is housing as really an anchor to unlock trade, manufacturing, energy. However, cross-border trade has a high cost of transaction costs, banking costs. There is the volatility. And again, as you can see, the panel is so diverse. We come from West Africa, North Africa, South Africa. We speak so many languages. And yesterday in a panel, I was hearing one of the director of a DFI was saying that, you know, if Africa was one continent, like the US with one, it would have really been easier to do trade. So we have high cost of transaction, volatility, currency issue, and I think fintech is a solution also to have this free trade. However, with fintech come other challenges that we need to look at, regulatory frameworks. We need to put in place solution systems that are the KYC, the AML, to flow directly. So we do see that perhaps this fintech solution as an easy way to lower transaction costs, keep also traffic local. Because, for example, if you are using the SWIFT, it goes out of the continent. So those solutions has to be curated to customize the norm of Africa. We need to have our DNA included in our solutions to make it work, and not take solutions that are from the West or from Europe to put it into Africa. So for us, I see that, you know, we have to curate our own trade solution, and the PAPSS is, for me, a good way, a good system to start.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. You know, what's interesting is that I just mentioned I was in Algeria at the attending the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, which is, by the way, the largest trade fair on the continent. So get your passports ready, for those of you who may not have a passport already, but find some time on your calendar to attend the one that will take place in Nigeria in 2027. One of the topics that we discussed was, can Africa trade without foreign currency? And it was a very, very controversial topic right now, right? We have some countries that says anybody who seeks to de-dollarize will be faced with retaliatory tariffs and possible other types of sanctions. So it was a very interesting conversation. So perhaps we'll talk a bit more about that next round of discussion. But to your Excellency, I don't know anyone who works harder than this woman. She is everywhere on the continent in the Inter-Africa trade. And I admire you so much, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
And I have no idea where you get all this energy from, but thank you.
From loving Africa.
There you go. There you go. Well, you know what they say, if you love what you do, you won't feel like you work a day in your life. And she's the example of that. And she looks good with all this. I'm so proud. So, Your Excellency, even with the best agreements, they can falter without proper governance. Okay, an AfCFTA will not succeed, let's just be honest, without investors, businesses, and citizens that actually trust that commitments will be honored, commitment like the AfCFTA, because it is a commitment. You have 44 countries that are party to the AfCFTA. There are certain things that countries have to do to make sure that their national laws are consistent with the AfCFTA. And if those entities don't feel like there is trust, it could ultimately impact how they do business. So, Your Excellency, how can African states strengthen the rule of law, transparency, and dispute resolution to ensure that the AfCFTA delivers more than promises on paper?
So thank you very much. This is really very important, because if we talk about AfCFTA, it's just an agreement. But to implement this agreement, we need some multifactorial. And actually, many women on the ground, cross-border traders, does not know what does this AfCFTA means to them. How can it be really relevant to all of us on the continent, whether big companies, women, youth, SMEs? So in order to make it really happen and to really have trust among ourselves on 3 pillars. First pillar actually is about private sector strengthening, including SMEs, women, and youth. Because if we talk about implementation of AfCFTA, we need to make awareness information for our private sector, build their capacity to be able to know about those agreements, to know about those laws, to see how is it relevant to them, to make sure that, for instance, the protocol for women and youth, how is it really going to work? That the protocol for digital trade, how does it work? The information needs to really be domesticated for all of us on the continent. The second pillar is about policy advocacy. As Africa Business Council, we're really advocating for to see how this implementation of AfCFTA can happen, because, as you rightly said, trust is important. So we need to have harmonization of all the regulations and the policies across the continent. You cannot just trade by one country and another regulations or certificates in another country. If you want to register a product, you need to, like pharmaceutical or medical consumer, you need to register across each country. It's not possible. So harmonization of all the regulations is very important. Another issue really is, if there is a dispute for the businesses, where we are going to go? So there also, again, should be a mechanism which is independent and fair for settlement disputes across the AfCFTA. One thing of the policies that we are really also, again, pushing to have it happen, the AfCFTA, is government procurement, which I believe that is very important. So at the African Union Private Sector Forum, we had a recommendation that was agreed by the ministers of finance and planning to have at least 40% of all government procurement goes to African private sector, including SMEs, women, and youth. So if I have a contract for construction, why does Chinese come and make it on the continent? We have to see who are in the business on the continent. If we have medical consumer supplies, for instance, in Egypt, we have 400 medical consumer supplies industry. Why do I bring it from outside the continent? Whatever on the African soil should not be brought from outside the African soil. This is very important. We need to push actually this. The third pillar is, again, if we want to trade among ourselves as African, what are we going to trade among ourselves? We need to make a mapping exercise. What is the present manufactured on the continent, and what is the raw materials, and how we industrialize this raw material? Because if I want to trade a made in Africa product, it should be competitive, value added, it should be high quality, certified, regulated, and competitive. That's how I really have to do the other this. So we need to link science and technology with industrialization. We need to have industrial policies. We need to have special economic zones for different clusters. And we need to really make a mapping exercise of our private sector on the continent in different clusters. That's why, for instance, under Africa Business Council, our founding vision is a competitive, borderless, innovative Africa for trade, investment, and industrialization. And we have 25 clusters that speak for trade, investment, industrialization, agriculture, minerals resources. For instance, everybody, if you see talking about minerals, we are organizing the Congress for Mineral Resources Development, which is about value addition, beneficiation, and industrialization of our raw materials. It's not about exploitation. It's not about exporting raw materials. It's really about how we in Africa add value to the raw materials. So we are talking about electrical vehicles. By 2030, we need 300 million electrical vehicles. Who is going to industrialize the lithium batteries? And we have lithium on the continent. Are we exporting it outside and then re-import it? Or we should really build the capacity of our industrialization on the continent? So we really need, but to do that, we need energy, we need infrastructure. Again, who will build our rails or bring people from outside? Or we do it ourselves. So the major issue of the governance and role of law is to empower our own people on the continent and have laws that would really see how we implement it with very transparency, to see how we engage the private sector within the whole issues of the policies and the rule of law, and to have a monitoring and evaluation mechanism, because M&E is very important for the transparency and the implementation. So when we say that AfCFTA, we need to make sure that it is present everywhere. Like when I was chair of COMESA Business Council, we did a survey for COMESA trade regime, simplified trade regime. I went and personally between the borders between Zambia and Zimbabwe, Djibouti and Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan. I asked the cross-border women traders, do you know anything about the simplified trade regime? They didn't know anything. Same if I go now to do for AfCFTA. So how we are going to build the awareness of our whole sectors of the private sector, including SMEs, women and youth, to know how they benefit from AfCFTA, to see how the member states implement it, and to have a hotline if they don't implement it. If we really need to have a prosperous, peaceful, integrated Africa, we need to see how we empower our people of Africa. Thank you very much.
You see the passion that keeps her young? There you go. You made several points that are so profound. One of them is, in a time when countries are engaging in more and more protectionist trade policies, I can't think of no other time than now for the African continent to truly accelerate the implementation of the AfCFTA. And those are not necessarily my words. Those are also the words of Secretary General Wamkele Mene, who is the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Now is the time. And secondly, you talked about the exportation of Africa's raw materials to countries and then turn around and bring them back in finished products. We're robbing the continent of our youth's ingenuity, of our ability to build wealth, right? And I'm so happy you touched on that. And this is what the AfCFTA is about. It's about making sure we no longer take this course of action, and that we're engaged in value-added trade, right? So very, very important key. You have situations where we export the beans, right, to other parts of the world, and then turn around and bring in the chocolate bars and finished.
So, you know, my sister, cocoa beans, we export $5.7 billion, while the chocolate industry, they were $217 billion. So you see how we are lacking?
It is a challenge, and this is what the AfCFTA aims to address. Huge problem. Now, I'd like to go over to Joyce, Council. The AfCFTA Secretariat is headquartered in Accra, Ghana. And it wasn't imposed on Ghana. It was something that the Republic of Ghana lobbied for and said, we want the Secretariat to be headquartered there, which comes with a great deal of support. But from a legal perspective, Joyce, we know that when it comes to trade, whenever you have people doing business with each other, litigation is bound to happen. That's just a reality. And it's how we resolve these types of conflict and disputes that define credibility, right? And I know that, you know, as a law firm who work with clients who wish to do business on the African continent, one of the things that they ask us before they go into a market is, does the country has a system, a legal system in place that in the event that litigation were to arise, that I actually will get a free day in court, and it would be independent from the executive branch and other entities within that government. It is a very important question for American investors who seek to do business on the African continent. But while the AfCFTA has the dispute mechanism, which is a state-to-state national judiciary, which is state-to-state, which will address state-to-state conflict, but national judiciaries will at some point be called on to interpret these various obligations under the AfCFTA. So counsel, what steps has Ghana taken to build judicial capacity so courts are prepared to handle AfCFTA related matters?
Well, thank you very much. And I think that for every investor, whether African, European, American, you name it, the first thing they want to be sure of is that there's safety, there's certainty, there's consistency, that the judiciary system is fair and able to amicably resolve or adjudicate matters of any conflict that may arise. But how often do you see agreements that talk about a forum being, for example, in any African country when there's a need for arbitration or a need to settle any disputes, for example? Most of the agreements that you see and interpret would always tell you that we're going to London, we're going to China, we're going to Europe, for example, Germany, to even Milan. And now we also have a Chinese center for arbitration. So that tells you that something is obviously not right with Africa, for example. I mean, yes, the ECOWAS tried to set up the ECOWAS court, but what is it they do? So I think that first and foremost, beyond building capacity, and to be honest, many of us here are also lawyers. We do know that in Ghana, for example, and Africa as a whole, if you talk about our judiciary, our justice system, our jurisprudence, I believe that we've evolved over the last few years. Take away the days of the coup d'etats and all of those, disputes that we used to have. When it comes to justice and justiciability, I think that there's no doubt that we have some of the finest, some of the best anywhere in the world. I mean, you come to the United States of America, for example, most of the lawyers you meet also happen to be probably of also African origin. You go, for example, to Europe, it's the same. I think that we've come of age in that sense. And when you talk about laws and regulations, there is enormous harmony in terms of the legislations that we have. What I think we need to start doing is learn to consolidate. I mean, I remember coming across our new Companies Act, for example, and then hearing that the Establishment Act of the Ghana Investment Promotion Authority was going to be amended. I thought, why didn't they just consolidate the two? Why would I not pick up a Companies Act, for example, and find every rule or regulation that is to do with investment? And I think that this was a missed opportunity by the AfCFTA Secretariat in particular. I think that they should have paid closer attention to have this particular document literally embody every facet of investment laws that are required for any successful business arrangement or arbitration. You know, gradually we need to move to a point where we build harmony in our rules and regulations, that we have common books where you pick up and know that A, B, or C can be found here. I think these are the things that we need to find ways to introduce into our conversations. When you see American investors arrive, for example, in any African country, the first thing is whether government will respect the agreements if governments change. That is one of the biggest disincentives for anybody wanting to invest in Africa, for example. And we all know, we're lawyers, we know what happens. Agreements are entered into under one administration. As soon as they leave, they immediately go into arbitration and literally cancel these contracts without any, reference to what the agreements hold for the future or for our country. I think that what we need to get the AfCFTA Secretariat to do, because Ghana has demonstrated its commitment to improving the investment climate by hosting this all-important agreement. The second thing is that state parties to the agreement must also show that they have enormous expectations and hope in this particular document by doing what? Ending protectionism and allowing for trade between African countries. Secondly, we should end rules, for example, visas to travel within one African country and the other. The third thing that mitigates against all of our efforts is infrastructure. And the World Bank will tell you that most African countries are yet even to meet slightly a 50% deficit in terms of the infrastructure gap in health, in roads, even in housing. We have serious challenges. I think that maybe the Secretariat must also start to work on capacity. I remember years ago, we had to start to train our judges in maritime arrangements and agreements, for example, because mostly there will be disputes arising from port to port, cargo issues, and they will be adjudicated as normal contracts. But in those cases, sometimes there's a little bit of something that takes it off your regular contract arrangement. So yes, we do need to find a way to build capacity, but I think that in terms of what is available, there can be no doubt. But yes, AfTA should not actually look at disputes from a state-to-state perspective. They must also look at the local state-to-state issues that may arise amongst business people, for example. Ghana has a public law, for example, in terms of private arrangements, etc. We still insist even that you should have a local partner, etc. How will investors view these sorts of arrangements that actually still find ways, no matter how small, to create a certain protectionism that people don't want to see? And of course, when you look at exports and imports, there's always an imbalance, even as to what you can actually export into another African country. So let's leave that one, then not come in and talk about even America, because then, of course, now you know that the tariffs have arrived. 10% initially for Ghana in particular, now 15% for almost most of the other African countries. Now we have to start thinking, how do we improve upon our business climate? How do we improve upon our manufacturing? How do we also industrialize? How do we encourage other African countries to start to believe that Africa can improve intra-African trade without necessarily, look at the distance even of carrying cargo of any kind from any African country to Europe, for example, to America, or even to China. These are some of the bottlenecks. So we steamroll all these things mostly and think that, oh, it's okay to just sign an agreement. Let's become state parties to this agreement. Let's see how it works. If there is no commitment, if there's no strategy, if we don't plan for it, the AfTA Secretariat will be there. Yes, we've granted them all the diplomatic status that they require, but eventually we'll still be marking time and not make any progress. If we want to make progress, we need stability, we need harmonization of our laws, we need a justice system that is firm and fair, and of course, cost of doing business, another thing that African countries must also visit. And then apart from all of that, look at also the bottlenecks to trade and trading successfully. I think that most often than not, we even appear to give more preference to foreign investors than we do to the local ones. But note that there are some African investors who will be willing to invest even more in other African countries than to go to Europe or to America. The question is that, what is the enabling environment? What is the encouragement? What is the motivation? What is it that we have to offer when there are disputes arising from some of these agreements? How do we ensure that there's fairness, that there's equity, that there's justice? I think that's all that people want. An environment that allows businesses to thrive, allows businesses to operate, allows businesses to also continue, because remember, consistency is one thing. Even the currency fluctuations in African countries are a huge factor against any attempt to invest. So for example, if you want to invest, you're a billionaire from Africa, what do? We read about Dangote now exporting oil to America. It's great news. Why is he not doing the same to the other African countries? And even on block. I think that these are the questions that we need to start asking if we want the AfTA to work. I believe that our president has actually indicated clearly, and he was at a conference that was established in Ghana recently, that Ghana is open for business. Yes. But yes, we are open for business. We want the right kind of business. But even if Ghana is open for business, we must also see that there's that 100% commitment from Nigeria, for example, that is Ghana's largest trading partner and closest neighbor even. We have all the other landlocked countries. How have we worked to improve trade with all of these countries that bother us closer than we do to China or to America, etc.? And to say it very kindly, our chocolate, even the finished product, in some other jurisdictions is actually a raw product. That tells you that we need to add even better value, that we need to improve quality also to be able to attract the sort of investments that we all want to see. So my sister, this is a conversation that I think is still in motion. Hopefully we'll get there, but I think that Africa is ready to take it to the next step. Look, we offer the best of everything. Skilled workforce, young people. Look at the level of education of African experts and African professionals. Talk about AI technology, talk about investment laws, talk about any kind of skill set that you require. But remember also that age is just a number, because think about it. Most of the technological billionaires that we read about, they normally start about in their 20s on university campuses, for example. How have we trained the young African to start to take investment and business opportunities very, very seriously? I think that the buck stops with African leaders, stops with African governments, starts also with the nature of the laws that we pass and how these laws will actually also help us better platforms to encourage better businesses. So I think that the Africa Prosperity Network is doing a great job. What they need is support from each and every one of us. And I think that judging by the expertise here, there's hope for the future of Africa and investment. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hope is the one thing we must never lose, in spite of. But to close, one last question that I want each one of you to answer, and keep your responses at 1 minute or less, please. And then after that, we'll open the floor for attendees to ask questions, 1 or 2 questions. So we cannot forget Africa's extended heartbeat, which is the diaspora. As I said earlier, in 2024, the diaspora sent over $94 billion in remittances back home. That is more than FDI and official aid combined. Yet, too often their roles are framed narrowly as household support. So to you all, and I'll start off with Waimela, how can we reimagine diaspora engagement, not just as remitters, but as strategic partners in financing infrastructure, building value chains, and driving intra-African trade under the AfCFTA? 1 minute or less. Thank you.
So yes, I think it's a very passionate debate, and time is against us. So at Shelter Africa Development Bank, our mandate is really clear. We need to reduce the cost of capital, and we need to have other way of de-risking investment. And I think that is really important. When we talk about diaspora, and we in Africa, we all have families that are living abroad. Some of them are sending money to build a house, and at the end of the day, they don't see the house, but the uncle has a new car or a new fridge. So with Shelter Africa Development Bank, this is a reality. We just need to address, as we are saying, execution and implementation is key. We just need to put the best practices in the regulatory framework. And it has to start with us. We tend to say decolonization has to happen, but we need to be at the table and also do our best practice. So Shelter Africa Development Bank, under my mandate of the department, we have built a diaspora fund where we are building pipeline of bankable projects for them to invest. I think diaspora is really critical to unlock and be more catalytic on the continent. So definitely we need to have pathway for diaspora to finance to come back, but we need to have best practices, regulatory framework to be in place to have this finance be catalytic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And before we go on to Her Excellency, I know many of you have other engagements. So if there's a need for you to leave immediately after you respond, please feel free to do so. We completely understand. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to connecting with you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very happy.
Thank you so much. Your Excellency, thank you.
So thank you very much. You know, the diaspora is our sixth region of the African Union. And it's very important that we link together with all the diaspora across the world. And one of the initiatives actually that we did with AfCFTA-backed is for instance, the Africa-Caribbean Business Council, which speaks for how we really have the diaspora as our continuation to see how we have business linkages among ourselves, how we are able to identify clusters. Like, for instance, when we were in Granada with AfCFTA-backed, we found out that in the Caribbean, they are very, very much attached to our fashion industry. So this is one thing that we have identified with the fashion industry among ourselves, with healthcare, with agriculture, agribusiness, with financial services. So we have identified several things. So if we have one of the recommendations that to have really investment platforms, and those investment platforms, we can put the projects that we need across the continent, and then we invite the diaspora to see how they invest on the continent according to their priorities. Again, business linkages. We need to have business linkages with Africa and diaspora in different clusters. Like, for instance, when we are talking about diaspora, how they want to come and to invest, they need priorities. Are they going to invest in agriculture, in technology, in healthcare, in real estate, whatever? So this, again, could be identified among ourselves. Again, we need to see how we make among the diaspora is huge. It's across the whole world. How I identify in which diaspora, and also link our SMEs, women and youth from Africa with the diaspora, because for us it is very, very important to see how we link all of us as the private sector. So as diaspora is our sixth region, we are very happy at African Union to see how we have those linkages and to make the platforms. And I think the Africa-Caribbean Business Council is one of the whole thing that we really need to see how we enforce it. And I think through our panel here, we can have a lot of recommendations regarding linking diaspora with the African continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. No problem. Thank you so much. Thank you. I would like to move over to Amin. Please give us your perspective on how we can reimagine diaspora engagement in terms of their role in the implementation of the AfCFTA.
Thank you very much. Actually, I don't think that I will respond on the diaspora because more competent people than me have been speaking about that. I rather actually focus on in my opinion, the 3-4 things that actually would make AfCFTA work, because the question that was asked to us here is Africa response to the tariff war, right? And we all agree that Africa response to the tariff war may be the AfCFTA, but then how to get the AfCFTA really work? We all agree the first thing that needs to be done and that we are doing is investing into infrastructures. That's the reason why at the continental level we have developed the PIDA, Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa, and the CMP, the Continental Power System Master Plan. So both actually are pretty much advancing. But of course, to implement PIDA and to implement Continental Power System Master Plan, you need to make sure that you find the financing. And you don't want only to count on the financing coming from abroad. That's the reason why we are working toward actually creating domestic financing, sustainable financing, predictable financing. It will be quite long to explain that here, but I will say that these things are actually happening. Number 2, to make sure that we really take advantage of the AfCFTA, we need as well to increase our productive capabilities and our productive capacities. Actually, both capabilities and capacities. Capacities in terms of industrial capacity, capabilities in terms of the human resources that it takes actually to make sure that we industrialize ourselves. keep actually bringing the question of the cocoa, and we export 7 billion. Yet the market is 300 billion around the world. It's a complaint that I have been hearing when I was working on the chocolate sector in the private sector, because I used to be a senior executive vice president in Nestle, you know, buying cocoa and making chocolate, that importing back to Africa. I was very happy to make it because I was making a lot of bonus from my pocket, right? But at the same time, nothing have been done from our side to change that. We keep actually talking about it, but what it takes to become a proper chocolate producer is not just about taking a political decision to transform that locally here. It takes time to invest into branding, into marketing, into science, into so many things, into even creating the consuming habits. So are we capable? Are we willing to do so? Takes time, but we really need to invest into productive capacity and capabilities. And thirdly, for us to trade among ourselves is not just a matter of actually currency or fintech. It's about trade facilitation. So if I want to move a good from Ghana to Nigeria, how long does it take? What it takes in terms of transport, in terms of administrative complications. We have been actually testing what we call the one-stop border post in Africa. We have implemented around 32 in East Africa, for instance, out of 82 which are actually on the pipeline. And we could see, for instance, on the border between Tanzania and Rwanda, we have actually in the one-stop border post that I think is Busuma around this border post. We have implemented that in 2017. And we went from a baseline where it was taking about 12 hours to clear a truck to now 15 minutes to clear a truck. Solution for intra-African trade and trade facilitation is one-stop border post. We have experimented the same thing in the border between Kenya and Uganda, where actually we moved from 500 trucks per day because it was taking quite long to about 2,000 trucks per day today, actually, to do that, because we have established one-stop border post. Trade facilitation is key. And then finally, and I will stop here, just be fair to us, because everyone spoke 20 minutes while we spoke only 2 minutes. You know, be a bit fair to us.
Go ahead.
We spoke 2 minutes, and our sisters spoke 20 minutes each.
Go ahead, so, deliver your dissertation.
I like actually listening to them, by the way, but just give me 30 seconds to complete what I was saying. To actually hear, and this is extremely important as well, you know, you ask a question about when Trump actually kicked off the tariff war. I remember there are many countries that were saying, well, we're going to be maybe export our product to other African countries. And some people actually call me and ask, what if, for instance, Lesotho, who was actually exporting a lot of clothes and apparels within the regime of AGOA to the US, and they were blocked, can they actually export that to Senegal? And I said, no, impossible to do that. Why? First, everything was actually done for the US market, that's number one. And number two, there is no even interest for Lesotho to export to Senegal. The reason why actually Lesotho was exporting to the US is not because they necessarily like US, because they need the dollars. And they need the dollars to import what they cannot produce and what cannot be produced in Africa, basically medicine, technologies, equipments. So as of now, where we are today, of course, the best way for us to face the tariff war, you know, is not just saying let's divert what we are exporting outside within Africa, is to increase our productive capacity so that we can replace what we are importing. And the most basic things that we're importing, take medicine, for instance, take cotton wool. 99% of the cotton wool in Africa is imported. Do you know that? Cotton wool, easy thing. It is done from the cotton west, the fiber west. It's not even from real cotton, it's from the west. We tried to do that in Ghana. Do you think that we succeeded to do it? No. We have tried to invest. We got opposition from people in the government, from people in the business, from everyone. We couldn't even buy the raw material, and the raw material is just being thrown away. I will conclude by saying that let's be serious ourselves if we want to be independent and sovereign and free. It starts by being serious ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Time well spent delivering the dissertation. Thank you. Two last questions for one last question for our two panelists, and please keep it at a minute or less. Again, I'll come over to Joyce. Joyce, I can't think of any country on the African continent that promotes diaspora engagement more than Ghana. We know Ghana started the year of return, where a number of African Americans have returned home. A number of people from Ghana have actually also returned home. We have a number of people from our firm that are of Ghanaian descent who have opened businesses and are doing incredibly well in Ghana. So I think we already know what you're going to say, but want to hear from you again. How can the diaspora support with the implementation of the AfCFTA?
Let me very quickly say that we ought to give the diaspora their flowers. I think that for the African continent, the diaspora has been a huge partner in what little success we've chalked. I think sometimes we don't give diaspora enough credit. I mean, most of the huge investments in Africa across the world, where do they come from? Mostly people who've lived elsewhere, made some good money and returned home. People who've gone to learn very good and interesting skills and returned home to invest. People who probably have made some good money elsewhere and come back home to do something positive. The challenge is that how have our homes received these investors? I think that this is why we ought to start to reimagine a continent where we start to consolidate, collaborate better with the diaspora. We ought to create that environment, remove the bottlenecks. I mean, come to Africa, what do we do with the borders? Mostly we are smuggling. What are we smuggling? The same things that we're expecting to use as catalysts for better trade opportunities. I think that the diaspora has done a yeoman's job and they are continuing to do so. But what we ought to do now is to find better ways to secure whatever little investments they have, to ensure there's a certain streamlining also, because people lose a lot of money in the process. Currency fluctuations mean that you invest heavily. The next day, the money is gone. The banks go down. There's also things happening. We don't even believe in mergers and acquisitions in ways to at least secure and safeguard the investments that people from the diaspora make. Personally, from an expert's perspective, I think that the diaspora has done a great job. I think that we now ought to give them something more so that we can even attract even more investment from the diaspora. And that is a role that AfCFTA can take up very, very seriously. We go on all these investment drives. People bring in huge sums of money. The question is, how do our governments safeguard these investments so that they make profits, not shut shop or make losses and then eventually go bankrupt? That is what we need to be working to improve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joyce. Last, Ibrahima, please, you have the floor.
Okay, I'll try to make it
1 minute or less.
Yeah, I'll see how elastic my minute is, but no, but frankly, listen, the role of the diaspora is key, and I believe that there are a few things that we need to do, that we should do to leverage that. One, our countries, the various countries actually go on road trip to present programs, for investments. But most of the time, this is done for foreign investors. Why can't we have the same for just the diaspora, where basically you have bankable projects that actually are really dedicated only to the diaspora? Okay. I think that yeah, because they have the resources, they're already investing, and then there is a way to redirect those investment into something that is productive. That's one. Two, and there are a few examples that I can give you. I mentioned that I'm leading the Partnership for Digital Access in Africa. Our goal is to hit 1 billion people connected on the continent by 2030, along 3 areas. One, connectivity. For example, funds can come from the diaspora to connect communities across the continent, but with a business model where there is a return. Community Wi-Fi or connecting schools. There are 500,000 schools across the continent. All those can be connected with diaspora money and make return on that. There are 100,000 primary health centers across the continent. That can be done with diaspora money. It doesn't cost that much. Already what is being invested can be used to that. That's one. Two, low-hanging fruits. I just read last week the latest report from GSMA on mobile. Today, already you have 65% of the population that is within GSMA, within GSM coverage. So it's almost 800 million people. They are under coverage, they have GSM network, but they are not using it for two main reasons. One, they cannot afford the devices, right? Two, there is no relevant content. So these are the type of investment that the diaspora can make easily. There are programs, whether it's in Kenya and even with mobile operators, where you can finance devices. So these are examples. And then third, it's really digital scaling. All these things that we're talking about, if we are not able to have the right skills on the continent, it's not going to happen. It's not, building a road is one thing, but you need to have the brain. We're moving into a new era now that is really technology-based, that is AI-driven, that is service-driven. You mentioned the investment, the return that is expected, but we need to have 320 million Africans who are tech-savvy for jobs by 2030. Where are we going to find them? 320 million. So in terms of even jobs creation, wealth creation, entrepreneurship, that's where I think we need to focus on. Because the other thing that we're talking about is not going to they're not going to happen overnight. You need to have the brain power for that. You need to have people to think differently, to come up with the system that would work. So that's, I think, on an investment side. And then the second, which is maybe even the more important side in my view, is the talent that we have within the diaspora that actually can contribute to that. We need money for what? To buy talent or services. The diaspora actually can monetize their expertise. Earlier when I was talking, I mentioned, for example, you take the health sector. We have one doctor per 23,000 people in Niger, one per 8,000 on the whole continent. Imagine the number of doctors that we have, even here in the US, from Africa. There are thousands of them. They are here available. So how can we leverage that? I think that is the type of really strategic thinking that we need to have. How can we facilitate that? How can, especially with technology, they can do teleconsultation, a doctor who's here can actually, and I have seen it because when I was there again, we tried those. So for me, that's really where I would like us to move the conversation. And then we're happy to support that because this is tangible. This is something we're saying that Africa is the future, but all of us agree that Africa is today, the future is today.
Absolutely.
We have all this, so let's make it happen, and then we're willing to support that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. With that being said, this concludes our panel discussion. Please give a round of applause to our experts. Thank you so much to Africa Prosperity Network for convening this timely conversation, and we look forward to hearing more from future speakers. Thank you. Thank you.
Discover a land of boundless riches, where peace and tranquility are nurtured, where the fusion of freedom and excellence unite with Ghana's vibrant cultural heritage. Golden Coast Developers proudly presents Heritage.
Imagine an Africa where borders do not divide. Imagine an Africa where borders do not divide but connect, where a farmer in Kenya can seamlessly trade with a manufacturer in Nigeria, where innovation...
Discover a land of boundless riches, where peace and tranquility are nurtured, where the fusion of freedom and excellence unite with Ghana's vibrant cultural heritage. Golden Coast Developers proudly presents Heritage 100, Ghana's first Afro-inspired community development crafted by and for the African in you. A stunning high-rise designed to harmonize the warmth of Accra with modern African architecture, situated in the hearts of Livorno, one of the most cosmopolitan neighborhoods. Immerse yourself in the Heritage 100 experience, where we cater to your every need with our impeccable 24-hour concierge services.
The Executive Director of the Africa Prosperity Network, Nanachua Hackman, and Madam Joyce Bawa Mokhtari, Presidential Aide from Ghana. And there's a reason we're doing this. So the gentlemen were, and we have a director of, one of our directors for APN, Nkiru Balong, is here with us from Africa Soft Power. Please join us up on the stage. So during the panel, there was a comment that the women got more airtime to speak. And I think it was only fair that they did, because a lot of conferences see men speak more than the women do. So the launch will also be done by an all-female group. A round of applause. And Joyce will do us the honors to announce APD 2026.
So it is my distinguished pleasure to declare the Africa Prosperity Dialogues 2026 happening in Accra from February 4th to 6th, 2026, duly launched.
A round of applause. Fantastic.
And the theme, you'll find that one very exciting and interesting. Empowering SMEs, women and youth in Africa's single markets. Innovate, collaborate, trade. I think that's awesome.
That's it.
Bravo.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you all in Accra.
2026. So please bring all the diaspora investors. We're looking forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joyce. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So we're going to slide straight into our open forum. And we have two distinguished panelists joining us here. Terry Afram, Terry, and Ifwa Dugan. So Ifwa, okay, there you are. And Terry is right there as well. Yeah. So that's we like it, yeah. Okay.
Distinguished guests, this is our moment to make history. We must act not in isolation, but together as united Africa.
Ghana is proud to be the home of this important dialogue series, and it will continue to enjoy my utmost support to make subsequent summits even greater.
Innovation and community. And that's the reason why I really wanted everyone to really draw closer together. Now, this is our response, but was the trade war a hurdle on our road to prosperity? Maybe not. Maybe it was really a fortuitous opportunity for us to rewrite history. But for that to happen, I think the previous panel gave us 3 key takeaways, which is increase productivity capacities, flatten the borders, work together to build, because at the end of the day, it is down to us. If I'd like to start with you, because in following from the previous one, the woman must have more voice than the men. Do our current policy frameworks allow us to negotiate as equals on the global stage? And whatever your answer will be, I'd like to know why and what can change.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be amidst you all today. So looking at us as Africa, and when it comes to trade, our policies do not make us equal to the rest of the world. It doesn't. And there are numerous factors that play into that. And I believe that the earlier panelists made mention of it, where, for instance, some of our policies is why we export primarily raw goods and services, and a reference of chocolate was mentioned, where the industry for cocoa in comparison with chocolate, there's a wide gap, right? So clearly it does tell us that when you look at Africa and our trade policies as a whole in comparison with the rest of the world, there is a clear gap. We are not at par. We are not trading with our equals. They don't see us as their equals. And what can be done differently? I think that AfTech is doing something with respect to that. And certain regional blocks are doing something. We can take, for instance, some of the initiatives that we're taking between La Côte d'Ivoire and then Ghana when it came to cocoa, and the stands they took, right? So these are some of the small initiatives that are being driven to more or less bring us at par or make us co-equals when it comes to trading across the globe. What can be done better is for us to re-look at the policies that we have on a country level, first off, because it's very important, and then on a regional block, because Africa is quite large. AfTech is doing a fantastic job in, harmonizing the trade agreements across board. Nonetheless, it's very imperative that typically the global economy trades with Africa on a singular level, done on a consolidated level. So when I say single, I mean on a country level. So it's important for us to start from that, and where we look at what's the realities when it comes to trade in a country like Ghana. What's that industry looking like at the moment? So we look at Ghana, for instance. We've got the automobile industry, where we were talking about the informal sector, which is what actually drives our economy, right? Of course, we know the service sector also drives it, but that primarily drives the economy. So what sort of policies can we, engineer or bring forth that can cater for those sectors that are left out of the conversation, to ensure that we are pushing them towards a proper industrialized model, right? And then we look at how can we then consolidate that or harmonize that across the regional bloc. So ECOWAS region, how can we harmonize that clearly? Because the case in Ghana could somewhat be similar to that of Togo or that of Benin or Nigeria, which is more close. I think the story or conversation when it comes to Nigeria and the dynamics and economic indicators are quite similar to us down the rest of the BVRM scope, right? So then we harmonize this on that front, and then we look at it on a regional level with AfTech. And from that perspective, I think that we may be able to finally, be seen as co-equals, and when we're trading with the rest of the world. But then, you know what? Let's throw that question to the audience to see what they also think about that.
Absolutely, and
Right.
we're going to go around for your thoughts on that. But the African proverb comes to mind from everything you just talked about, that we can look at G2G and strength in numbers, right? But that said, how do you build that muscle? Because you can be some very puny little 100 people as compared to your 300 Spartans,
Yeah.
right? And so how do we build that strength in numbers? Terry, do you think that there's a need for us to start looking for sustainable financing into the continent so that we can get to the point where we're building these SMEs and businesses? So collectively, they're not coming as small businesses, but they're actually carrying some proper muscle to negotiate at the table as equals.
100%. First of all, thank you very much for having me. So my name is Sarah from founder and CEO of Bridge Partners, and we're into getting private capital into the public good. That's how we call it. If you ask me, I would start from the start and sketch a context. I believe that Africa is the wealthiest region on earth, and this is facts. Right? Starting from the ground resources, every natural resource that the world needs is in Africa. God has blessed us like that, right? Secondly, if you look at the world's arable land, 60% of the world's arable land is in Africa, right? The land that can be used to produce food, 60%, which is a majority, is in Africa. If you look at the demographics, all right, we have the fastest growing and the youngest population on the globe. 19 years is our median age, right? So we have every single thing we need to be the most prosperous region on earth. So why is it that we haven't necessarily been able to realize the potential, right? One of the reasons is action, and the other reason is fuel, and fuel in the sense of money, right? Financing. I speak from the point of the diaspora, right? So we're building a $100 million USD diaspora fund to allow diaspora across the globe to invest in Africa. At the moment, the largest financier of the continent is indeed the diaspora. Right, the diaspora sends back more money than ODA, which is government assistance, and FDI combined. Right, to give you a few numbers, in 2010, the diaspora sent back 37 billion USD. In 2019, 87 billion USD. In 2021, 95.6 billion USD. And in 2022, already over 100 billion USD in official remittances. Right, and as you know, in Africa, official is not always real, right? Real is a larger number, right? Because cash transactions are not recorded under the numbers that I just quoted, which means that there's a lot of equity and a lot of opportunity in getting the diaspora to indeed be a part of fueling growth on the continent. Remittance numbers are huge and are great, right? But remittances go into consumption. Right, it's the kind of money that you send back to your grandmother, to your uncle, to your auntie, to your cousin for school fees, for for paracetamol, and for other quick fixes. And so indeed, as you already said, there's power in numbers, right? There's 160 million of us across the globe. If you're already sending back 100 billion USD in donations, something that you're not expecting anything in return for, I believe that we can also be an engine of growth in terms of sustainable investments, right? And that's exactly what we're building, a fund that allows each and every of us, from the US to the UK, to the Netherlands, to Germany, to indeed invest in the prosperity of the continent. And the beautiful thing is that you actually make money because it's a fund, right? That's the way we believe it's a sustainable thing. Africa is the region where you put anything in the ground and it grows, including money, right? I hope that kind of answers your question. So maybe a bit more concisely, indeed, there is strength in numbers. Once we come together, the $20 you sent to your grandmother to buy medicine from goes away. But 20 million invested together into a factory goes a longer way, right? Or the $100 can maybe feed a family for a week, right? But 100 million would be able to create factories that will be feeding the community for a lifetime.
Absolutely, Terry. I like that. So, I mean, we need to start going from remittances that go towards consumption into investments, because these investments then buy the future. But how do we, and I'm throwing this to anyone in the room with an opinion, please, just let's do this together. How do you see the idea of, say, a diaspora fund where the more than 400 million people, right? 160 million people, right? And if we even did 25% of that, that would be 40 million. And each doing an investment into that. 40 million people, say about $300 or $500 a year of investment into this. You look at the amount of money that could become. Is this the way you think that Africa ought to go, to raise the necessary financing cheaply, sustainably, quickly, to start plugging the infrastructure gap? Because 54 countries, we're not as interconnected as we should be. Whereas if you compare that to the EU, one of the reasons why it's very easy for people to fly around Europe for less than $100 at a time is because the interconnectedness and the infrastructure makes that possible. How do we do this in Africa? Will this bond go a long way to changing the dynamic? Doc, you want to have a go? Dr. King?
Thank you.
That's right.
I think that many of these questions are extremely important, but I also think that something that we talk about and we're missing right now is a very large number of youth. When we talk about Africa and we talk about all the wealth and so on and so forth, we talk about our young people, right? That more than 60% are under 15 years old. And as a person who works with children and youth for the last 30 or 40 years, as part of what I do in my life, I really even believe that this forum should be packed half with youth, because everything that we need to do, everything that needs to happen has to have youth involved in it, because there's no way to actually implement or even plan without having those that have to actually do something about it and actually get their buy-in and their take. So I think more and more, for example, when we're looking at the African Prosperity Dialogues, that's going to be in Ghana in February, however we need to do it, whether it's online, whether it's by, I don't know what young people do, I really think that we need to start adding these young people. And in my opinion, I think that's going to make a huge difference when we actually start to even get the diaspora of young people and also those within Africa to participate in what we're doing.
Now, that's a very good point. Fact of the matter is, in the next 16 or so years, 3 out of every 5 young persons will be on the continent. And so whether we do well or not is going to be dependent on how we equip them today. So yeah, the future is now. Let me turn to a young person at that. I think Jeffrey, right? Good. Jeffrey, from a young person's perspective, and forgive me, you do look young, and so maybe if you're not, then it's your looks are wonderful. But on a more serious note, as a young person, do you feel that you have a seat at the table, that your thoughts, ideas are welcome?
Well, again, thank you very much. I am young, I guess. I just turned 19 last week.
Oh, belated birthday to you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. So your question was, do I feel like young people deserve a seat at the table?
Yeah. No. Do you feel you do deserve a seat at the table? I think we all agree on that. Okay. But do you feel heard and understood?
I don't think we feel heard. I don't think we feel understood. But I think, like Doctor said, having these opportunities just to come and learn from the older generation. This African Forum is like type of places that I want to be at, type of places that we want to kind of involve ourselves into. But I feel like a lot of young people feel intimidated by it, in the sense that we don't think that we qualify to be in these spaces. But I think it just comes from a lot of motivation that I have in my life, where I am pushed by people like, my brothers here. Where they go? I don't know. But just by being pushed by people that actually believe in you and let you know that what you're doing is seen. So as long as the older generation helps, and whatever the older generation is qualified to be, but as long as they help to I guess instill that confidence in the younger generation, I think that's what's gonna push the needle for the younger generation being in spaces like this. So I think we don't see a lot of younger people here because they don't feel like they deserve to be here. But once we give them that voice and that space to feel like they deserve to be here and that they can be a voice, I think that's when we're going to see that.
So we have a global audience. A round of applause. That's fantastic. I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, okay, just for a couple of minutes. And this is because you are the point of contact for young people. And all these older folk in this room need to hear what young people have to say, because we keep saying that the young people are the future, and yet they're not involved in how the future is shaped. Now, if you didn't have your brother, would you have somebody, what do you think that the people around you in your community would have needed to do to make you believe in yourself, make you believe that you belong here and that your ideas could be the game changer?
Yeah, I mean, I think this right here is something that we know we need to do more, like having forums like this where we're inviting young people to come and speak their minds. I was invited where I'm from in Rockland County to speak at the mayor's office, and that really changed everything for me. So just inviting young people to speak their minds, give their thoughts, their clarity about things, and not just Africa, but the world in general. Because if Africa is doing well, that's good, but it's gonna eventually benefit the whole world in general. So I think just inviting young people to come to speak, making forums like this, kind of across America more often, not just in person, but then also like we're doing on Zoom as well. So I think things like that will kind of help out. That's my opinion.
Okay. All right, fantastic. Thank you very much. A round of applause. I'll come to you in a second. So Prav is up next. You were nodding vigorously when he was speaking earlier. Let's hear what you have to say.
I'm more of a neutral. I'm from India.
Okay. Is that mic on? You should have a green button, a green light on. Yeah, good.
So, obviously I can have a neutral voice. If I look at the leaders, you talk about
users. Sorry.
You talk about like Paul Biya, that's over 80s, Obiang in 80s, Bola Tinubu in 80s. So there are a lot of, older generation leaders that are not leaving, And I think the younger folks from Burkina Faso and Niger, now those are coup-based. They're not elected leaders. Young people are elected, they're more army-based, which kind of makes you feel that's not good because, where are the young leaders? They're not really there. And I don't see much happening. Plus, I was reading a statement that there are about 400 African companies that have a revenue of $1 million and above. What country has the most? You want to make a guess? Anybody? Huh? Any country? South Africa. Yeah, so there were 135 companies that are, and the top 10 is all in revenues on South Africa as well. So, I think things have to change fast because even South Africa President Ramaphosa is over 70 as well. So, I think there needs to be young leadership, as he said, but somebody has to elect them. And plus, I can give my perspective on women. I was reading, there's a high reproduction rate. I think Niger has about 6.8 children per woman. That's a lot. And considering infant mortality rate, that's become 8 or 9 because sometimes they lose babies as well. So I think reproduction rate has to be watched out as well before things can change.
Interesting perspective. Let's get your thoughts.
Hi, just listening to the young man who just
Jeffrey,
spoke.
yeah.
Yes, as an adjunct professor with the School of Nursing, a lot of times we tend to ask for the younger generation, but we don't come forward as mentors. I believe in mentorship because yes, the older leaders are still in power, But if they were mentoring younger people, then they would be able to do campaigns, run campaigns successfully and win. Until we get young people, I have 3 mentees at the moment, until we get young people in those areas to learn from us, they won't know what to do. For example, my idol, the person I idolize is my cousin, Baroness Scotland. I grew up with her mom raised me. I was an adopted daughter of her mom. And having the motivation to be like her, I've worked in Sierra Leone twice. I've been to Kenya. I've been to South Africa. I've done global work because I had someone, not only she was family, but someone to look up to, someone to emulate. But we have to start with mentorship. We keep asking for the young people. Right now, they're more into technology. I went to a school to speak recently for karate. And the elementary school students, everybody wants to be a YouTuber. Nobody wants to be a doctor. Nobody wants to be a nurse because, again, the internet is teaching them. So we have to find a way to merge technology with mentorship and do a better job. I think it's the responsibility is on us, not just asking to have the youth, but being mentors.
But that's where parents chip in. That's where parents have to step up.
Well, I hear you. That parents,
the community you raise, it's community raising a child.
So before you got in,
so not only the parent, community.
That's right. The reason we're doing this way is we're looking beyond innovation. We're looking at community, and I think that the very first comment that IFRA made simply suggested that, or reiterated something we all know, that there's strength in numbers, and if we're going to give young people the space to contribute meaningfully, they must feel that, they must know they belong, not feel. You can feel that you belong and know sooner or later that you truly don't. But great thing. I mean, you're talking about mentorship and its importance, but I'm going to come to you for your thoughts and then I'll talk to you in a second. Andrea, okay, let's hear you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I really just wanted to echo a lot of what Jeffrey had said, is that as also a young person, you know, when we're in these forums, especially speaking about the future of Africa, we oftentimes are regurgitating a lot of the language that has been taught to us from the West and are seeking to be like the West, and that being our standard of this future of Africa. And one way of doing it in these metrics of, you know, we speak about women, we speak about youth, but also it's a way of just ticking a box, you know, and meaningfully we're not seeing that and has become solely just a buzzword. So many people here use the talking point of, you know, the median age on the continent, both now and what it will be. And then at the same time in this room, there are barely any youth here, you know, and we constantly say youth, youth, youth are the solution or the future, but we're not in these rooms because we haven't been invited, because we haven't been engaged. And those of us who are here, as Jeffrey mentioned, it's of our own volition and desire to be here and of our own research that we did. And we continue to put ourselves in these spaces, but there's more than just us who wants to be here and who are also doing the work. And we're not, you know, passive participants. We are doing this work, we are having these ideas and creating our own forums because we're oftentimes not in these spaces with some of these high level people and we're not seen as our own experts in doing this work. It would have been very beneficial to have, you know, young African economists and entrepreneurs because there are many, you know, there's not a gap. But if you look in this space, it would seem like it doesn't exist and that's not true. And so oftentimes these bridges between some folks in the older generation and the younger generation are not happening. And as a result, we're seeing a lot of youth initiatives, which are great, but also we want to go further than those who have come before us and not have to stumble our way through some of the same mistakes that would be able to be, we would able to go around it, as somebody mentioned, in terms of mentorship, as collaborations, things like that, and utilizing also our own networks and our own expertise that we do have and that we are doing. So I think, you know, conquering some of those pre-existing barriers that we have, we don't want to see, you know, our elders as a barrier to the future of Africa, but oftentimes that is what is happening. And we know one reason may be because a lot of our cultures are hierarchical as it results in age, which is why you have some of this lack of confidence in youth of, can I be here? Can I grab the mic? can I sit on a stage? Because all you see are your elders who you defer to, who you like genuflect to and everything like that, but also us being empowered as we do to ourselves, but seeing ourselves in these spaces and us telling our own stories, and not only older people giving the talking points from the youth without us being meaningfully represented or engaged.
That's a fantastic point you raise. I just would like to maybe point out that the idea of the hierarchical nature of the African culture is actually quite new. There's a phrase in the Akan language that says "Yekobisabriwa." We're going to seek counsel from the elderly old woman. The idea is actually that the older generation are very accessible. Every Ghanaian child I know can be very proud of how much time they spend with their grandparents and how accessible they were. Growing up, I was very lippy because I was allowed to speak my mind by my grandparents, both on my maternal and paternal side, and the community. What do we need to do today to give young people the voice they need, or rather the access, without thinking to a point and the older people will have to take over? I would like you to attempt an answer to that and then make the point that you had in mind, sir. Please tell us your name.
My name is Dr. Rao. So, okay, I was about to come to that point.
Oh, fantastic. We're in the spirit.
So we have 20 people or 30 people here, right? Let me ask one question. How many of you are willing to invest $100,000 on Jeffrey's invention? None. Because the fundamental question comes from all of us here. While we encourage the younger generation, we don't believe younger generation will succeed. Because the first thing that we need to do is, okay, what you done in the past? What was your experience? What did you do? And he doesn't have answers for that. Because he's a young guy. He just came to in the morning today as he introduced to himself and he took us outside and took a picture. He has that vigor to come and talk to a 60-year-old guy and introduce himself, take us out and get that done. Can anybody invest in him? No. Because what we need to do as a forum, while we encourage younger generation, we should also put the generation on the other side to invest in the younger generation. One side doesn't win, two sides should win. And now the second factor for this younger generation is, as you said that YouTuber, did you ask them why they want to go on a YouTuber?
And what was their response?
Because they see that so the response really was the YouTubers have money and they are able to do a lot of things and they live good.
Perfect.
So that's all they are.
Okay, just hold a minute there. Okay. So did you ask them how much money they make as Uber?
No, I did not.
Okay, let's take an example,
no,
right?
I did
Okay,
not.
maybe $20,000. That moment, you should tell, if you become a healthcare professional, either a nurse or a doctor, you make tenfold of that. Then 20% of people sitting that YouTubers, they want to become, no, I want to become a doctor. I want to become a nurse. And you also have to instigate to the people, it's not just money factor, it's also social responsibility to give back to your community, right? Your mother, your father, somebody might have gone, you run for a doctor. You say, why don't you become a doctor or do a healthcare professional, do render that help? You need to give sometimes and instigate to thinking to the younger generation because they need a guidance. And the biggest point I wanted to tell my kids also who are younger generation, if I fall, it takes longer time for me to raise. Whereas a younger kid falls, there are a lot of support is there to pull him up and he or she can himself, when there's a raise much energetically and they have the vigor to take it next challenge. And these are all the things that we need to inculcate to the younger generation. As you said, like, go ahead and I didn't even know who he is and he didn't even know who I am. And he himself, so that should be encouraged more than he becomes okay. If I go and talk to somebody, they reciprocate. They're not okay. I don't want to talk kind of scenario. And if you make it 20 people like that, 100 people like that, they become a forum.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I will come to Johanna in a second. I'm going to save Terry and Ifua for the final round, and then we'll move to the next. So let's hear you. Please tell us your name.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jessica, and okay, so I'm from the part of the world that has a lot of youths, informal youths especially, and my line of work is always that to help them get trained in one skill or the other, and I can categorically say there are over 1,000 new businesses every day, SMEs, in my country. And as far as technology is concerned, we encourage this set of informal youths that have been neglected, sort of, to take advantage of tech. And the farthest that they've gone recently is how to market their businesses, their services, and their products online. And it's been really helpful. And some of them came to me recently and said they would like to learn exportations. And I was like, exportations? Why exportations? So they can make money in hard currency. Okay, so now I feel one of the issues that we have in common among African countries is the value of our currency. You know, when we talk about cedis, when we talk about Naira, it's still far from, you know, what it is in the diaspora that we look forward to. Okay, so now I think what we should be doing is deliberately reaching out to SMEs, how our little involvement can strengthen our currency. So it becomes a thing of attraction. Like I'll be looking forward to transacting business with somebody in Uganda, in Angola, in Ghana, from Nigeria, you know, and I think we should take forums like this to the grassroots. That's where I dwell. I have a lot of control in this space, and I think it should become a movement that the younger generation needs to see the importance of trading amongst other Africans. Like it has to be a deliberate movement. Coming here to the US for those programs, I see there are a lot of high-class meetings going on, and the people that would make it effective do not really have access to all these informations that we talk about. So I think we can just look more into creating movements that will take these informations or the technical know-how of what we want Africa to be into the grassroots. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jessica. So I know for the last 10 or 15 minutes we've focused on the young people. I would like to reframe this conversation and look to the diaspora. How do we harness not just finance from the diaspora, the skill set, energy of these young people, and direct that energy towards the continent? Joanna?
Thank you so much. The diaspora is vital to the development of our continent and certainly to the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. In terms of trade and investments, I think you have many people in the diaspora, and I don't have any data in front of me that I'm going to cite, but I think as a member of the diaspora myself, I can tell you there's a great deal of interest to do business on the African continent, right? But I think, however, a lot of their interest sometimes is in conflict with the perception that exists on the continent in terms of not getting a return on their investment, like the risky aspect of it, which is primarily a perception, because the data is very clear how successful one can be when you invest on the continent. So I go back to education, and because as an adjunct professor at Howard University, one of the classes I teach is the African Continental Free Trade Area. I was very intentional in asking the department for permission to teach this course, and I think Howard University is definitely the only HBCU in America that has a course on the AfCFTA. And I think that even when you look at other academic institutions around the United States, faculty may dabble here and there on the AfCFTA, but a course specifically on the AfCFTA, I would not say there aren't any, but I would like to see that. So for me, the reason why I brought it to the leadership at the university is because in order for the diaspora to be able to do business under the AfCFTA, they must know that it exists. Most people in the diaspora that you meet and ask about the AfCFTA, they don't know anything about it, right? I think the AfCFTA remains a very high-level conversation, right? And we need to be able to ensure that the average diaspora understands that if I am in Botswana and I want to do business in South Africa, how can I leverage the AfCFTA to do so, right? It is vital. And you start with education because these young people are members of the diaspora. They're going to be in positions of leadership. And many of them already are in leadership positions on campus and in other aspects of their lives. So it starts young. You have to start them young at the college level. And then, build that interest. And then they start talking to their family members about it, their friends about it. And before you know, you've started a movement in terms of educating intellectuals, smart people about the AfCFTA. Because for me, it made absolutely no sense for you to have Howard as a premier institution, HBCU institution in America, to graduate people with PhDs in international relations and bachelor's degrees in international. So when you talk about diaspora engagement, we must emphasize on the education component of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, yeah.
Yes, I would like to draw some parallels. I'm from India, and the same question has been raised. So my answer is not directly related to Africa, but I think there will be some lessons.
Okay.
So one of the things which India did is to attract diaspora. They attracted a lot of the experienced people who have succeeded in various areas, be it business, be it in finance, be it in education. These people were invited to some of the prestigious institutions as visiting professors just to generate that interest in the youth, the local youth. What can you do different? How do you break out of your traditional mode? Because you tend to go up in a society, you're thinking it's molded by what you see and hear around you. But what can you do different? And the diaspora professors or experts who are invited were from all over the world, not only from one country, United States, but also all over the world. And this kind of interactions generated interest from the visiting professors even to take up very senior roles in the educational institutions. They began to open the doors to newer ideas, newer ways of thinking, and it also attracted the youth to think positively and then not be kind of, looking at only going abroad and, making their mark, but also looking at what they have around them to, make a difference to society. This is one of the ideas I would like to recommend here for this forum to think. You can invite your experts, give them the roles and the opportunity to talk, and then maybe that will generate some traction.
Great stuff. We're going to do one quick round because we've got to be wrapping this up pretty soon. Brian, I was going to come to you actually. Let's hear you.
So this be a little controversial, but as a member of the diaspora, I hear a lot, and we're all Africa, right? If you know anything about biology, everybody in here and everybody outside is all Africa, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it is. One of the issues with the diaspora that I think that has to be really addressed is a lot of the diaspora here in America is still with the us and them, and and that's just the way we were trained. It's the way you were trained over there about us, right? It was, we're all ignorant and lazy, and you guys were all throwing spears at each other and eating each other in kettles. That was a cartoon you could watch just 25 years ago. So that us and them is a big issue. And it's intentional because they know that if we ever really got together, like we're doing right now, things will change, for the positive. And it's going to now because Africa is a white space opportunity. It's a white space, or maybe I should say it's a black space opportunity. But a lot of the things that were present in Africa, if you look at Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, what they did with the gold, that's being done now. That was a nice little experiment. It worked. And so I know the leaders of a lot of countries are now looking at that model and saying, okay, hey, we can do that. But the diaspora is key for Africa to succeed. We have money here, we have, and we don't think we have any money, but if our cousins in Africa will tell you, we got some money. We need to get past that whole us and them. Genetically, there is no us and them. We are all exactly the same. Your accent might sound a little bit more clearer than mine does, but once we get past that, I think that there'll be growth on both sides. That's why I think it's important for the dialogues to be here in the States come 2026. I think that's really key. It's just a matter of promoting.
It's happening in Accra. You're welcome to come over.
Well, I know. Hey, listen, we're partnered with the APN, so we know. Sadiq continues. He telling me to come over every month. And he said, I don't got 10 grand to be flying back and forth to Africa. But those dialogues here will make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Something like that, because we need to get past the us and them, become we.
Very good point. Very good point, Brian. Thanks very much. I think there was one hand up, and just if we can squeeze it into a minute and a half. So between the two of you in 3 minutes, then we can go back to Terry and and wrap this up.
All right, thank you. My name is Leslie Boma. I would like to say that for Africa to connect the dot in the 21st century, we really need to look and rebrand the whole continent. I'm saying this because I was in Accra this summer and I saw so many wasted talent that was falling by the roadside, so many talents, young ones. And I think that it's a time for us to just look at the government and just strengthen the government in terms of roads. I'm saying this because to connect those dots, you have to make Africa attractive. And that's why the diaspora will make their way there, to make Africa attractive in business, roads, simple things, basic things, training the youth in education and also the infrastructure. This is how you could rebrand Africa and make it very attractive. We should embrace the AI that is taking over the world right now. These are the places that we have to look into. Within the next 2 years, AI will consume the whole world. Are we ready for this? This is the question we need to ask. Because if we are not ready, we'll be left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Andrea, in a minute, you're good now?
I'll be very brief.
Okay, good.
Yes. Thank you so much for the floor again. One quick point that I just wanted to make to answer your question about the diaspora and also even tying to youth as well is really speaking about the political mobilization of the diaspora, especially the young diaspora, because I think oftentimes we don't utilize some of our privilege, even being in the United States, because of, let's say our parents left their countries for whatever reason that they did. Oftentimes then, being in a new country, they weren't necessarily politically involved here in the US. And then depending on the relationship with their home country, maybe they no longer want to be politically involved there, And me coming from Cameroon, everybody knows about Paul Biya. That can be something that really devastates you, discourages you, and you just don't look at the news, don't look at the government, put your head down and, find money for your family, and that's all, And so I think really thinking about the power that we have in convening in this way and using that politically, is very important. And for the youth, it's capacity building, understanding that we had a congresswoman here earlier, we can speak to her, we can email her. And those are things that oftentimes we don't know about that we can do. And those kinds of things go a long, long way. While we're here in the US, we can advocate to our Congress people, even for the president, and that has impact on foreign policy, on what is happening in our countries at home. And we are the ones that can speak to them directly as constituents, and there's power in that. But oftentimes that is something that is lacking.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And to all here, please note this, that we're live on all social media platforms, well, at least 5 of them: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and on X. And the handle is Africa Prosperity Network. Please let your friends know, because this is a very important conversation for us to bring them in on. And for those who are already tuned in, and we're also live on Asasi Radio in Accra, Ghana. Thank you all for tuning in. Now, here's a very important number of messages that have come over the streaming platforms. Molly Lamani says, congratulations, APN. Remittances for feeding families should not be seen as mutually exclusive. Families must eat while we invest and industrialize. And Joyce Lampton says, good conversation made better by the public forum. Well done, APN. Keep your comments coming in. And I have a few more questions. So we have... Sorry, before then. Faisal Ibrahim Sise says, it will be interesting to hear a perspective about African WTO members, the member states, en bloc, bringing claims against US for these unilateral tariffs and protectionist policies that are against the very foundation of why the WTO was founded. Anybody wants to take a swipe at that one? But do you think that there is scope for Africa to take a position against protectionism? Terry.
That's a good one. First of all, I think we have been tolerating quite a few things as an African continent over the past few decades, centuries. I think it is a valid conversation that we definitely need to have, but I think a much more important conversation is to look inward, right, in terms of what we have, right? I think we have an amazing opportunity on the continent, 1.4 billion people, right? At the moment, the GDP is 3 trillion. It could be a multiplication of such if you look at finding ways and means of indeed properly being invested into each other. So I think that's a much more interesting conversation that we need to spend a bit more time and effort on. As I said, Africa is the wealthiest region on earth. And I think one key thing that we'd have to be looking at the moment, there is one particular sentence which is very, very powerful that I think, you can take away. Every man's point of need is his point of contact, right? This is something I learned from a particular pastor, an apostle that I follow, Apostle Joshua Selman, and it's a very powerful statement. Every man's point of need is his point of contact, right? There's certain things happening globally at the moment that Africa is the key to, right? One of the key conversations that you'd see in New York at the moment, because it's also Climate Week, is the issue of climate change. Right? Africa is and has a comparative advantage to solve the issue of climate change, right? If you look at the resources, there is no EV market, electric vehicle market, without Africa. The ingredients fundamentally you need for the EV market to thrive are in Africa, right? If you look at even the absorption of CO2, there's the Congo basins that can do so, right? These are not features that are in Europe. These are not features that are in the US. It's in Africa, right? So we have to look for ways and means of leveraging that which God has blessed us with in order to turn the tide, right? And I think that's a much more, important conversation, right? I think, once someone needs you, they'll be a bit more flexible, right? So we'd have to find a way to make ourselves a bit more needed globally. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Efwa, so how does Africa look to diversify from, not just US partnerships, but partnerships outside of the continent that, at the moment is the US that's going to war on tariffs. So how do we start looking beyond the US? Could we diversify? Is it possible?
To some extent, yes. Right. And when we look at African countries and we look at our inter-African trade, right, it's about 17% in comparison with, and I stand to correct it on that, in comparison with Europeans who trade amongst themselves, which is more than 60%, and that of Asia as well, right? So there is an opportunity for us to look beyond the US. The AfCFTA gives us that leverage, right? Nearly 54 countries have already signed the agreements, and a few of them are going through some ratification. So there is that, of course, that opportunity for us where we can look beyond the US. Now, does the tariff wars give us an opportunity? Yes. Well, tariffs specifically are being placed on imports from, say, places like China coming into the US. So it means the suppliers, when you look at the supply chain, suppliers in China may likely be looking at new markets or new areas to redivert these. But then there's always that conversation as the sort of goods and services that China may be supplying to the US market, and the quality is slightly different from what Africa is receiving, right? So we can then, of course, there's a clear opportunity where we can look beyond, the US to areas like China, India, Japan, and Korea to trade with them, where they have flexible and more flexible policies and more lenient understanding, or more lean to how we operate or do business in our region. So yes, that opportunity is there. But there's a conversation that most of the trade and things we do in Africa is primarily tied to the US dollar, right? And I'm going to go slightly back to Terry mentioned about, the fund that's being created, and another person joined the audience, open forum, spoke about the fear of the risks, of doing business in Africa, and, diasporans wanting to invest in. And it's very imperative that the economic indicators need to align, right? And one of the clear indicators is, the inflation rate being at a single digit, right? It's something that several African countries, especially in the West African region, had been driving for several years. They were looking at, having a capital market integration. I remember this was back in 2019 where I did a research paper on it, and it hasn't materialized, right? When you look at West Africa specifically, only the BVR, which is the Francophone countries, have a single digital inflation rate, which is less than about 5% thereabout, and it's primarily because their currency is back to the CFA is back to the euro, right? So it's important that even if there's an opportunity for us to look beyond the US, there's certain indicators that as African countries and as a continent, we need to start looking at streamlining. We need to make sure that we are formulating policy, both monetary and fiscal policies, that would, stabilize our inflationary rate, that would also ensure that our FX is stable. Today, fortunately, with the tariff situation, countries like Ghana are benefiting, well, on the FX side, where today our FX, we've done, I think inflation is around 11.5%. Our FX is, thereabout, has also stabilized more or less. Other countries are gradually seeing that as well. Niger is currently seeing that as well. So, there's a clear need for us, if we want to look beyond the US and trade with other partners, there's a clear need for us in-house to ensure that we have the right monetary and fiscal policies in place to ensure that we are stabilizing our inflation. It means that inflation needs to be a single digit, one. It means that our FX should be stable, or we work towards having a single digital currency, which would be easier for us to be able to trade with people other than the US, right? And I think the BRICS is doing something currently, right, where they're trying to formulate a single digital currency, which would be easier for them to trade. So there's so many modalities or indicators that need to be at play for us to look beyond the US to be able to trade, with other partners. And that's what I've clearly stated. We need to look at the policy side, in-house, the ensuring that we have the right monetary and fiscal policies to ensure that the economic indicators that need to be, present to ensure that we're able to trade right and we're able to benefit is there, as well as ensuring that we look beyond that to see how best can we formulate a single digital currency. If we can't have the ECHO or any of the others that various blocks are looking at, how can we leverage on the blockchain and the cryptos to have a single digital currency that can enable us trade with other people, because it means that will not be backed by the US currency, right? And so then we'll be able to look beyond the US to trade with the other partners in Asia and continue to drive our economy.
Great.
Great. Now, thanks very much for that point. I'm going to go to, and forgive me, I'm hoping that my ancestors will help me pronounce your name right. Bakwe Tubman. She's a Liberian American cultural architect, serial entrepreneur, and an international strategist. She's got a great deal of experience, and having...
I wasn't ready.
Yeah, I'll give you time to get ready.
I didn't realize that it was coming. I apologize.
Giving the experience founding and running a global agency operating at the intersection of culture, commerce, and community, how do you see the global African community, what we would like to call the diaspora, getting beyond the hurdle of the perceptions that have kept us apart, borrowing from Brian's point of the them and us perception that's hurting that collaboration, which can unlock a continent that's truly stronger, not just on paper, but in real terms?
Hi, everybody. I mean, I think everybody needs to get on a plane and go to Africa. If you're from America and you're Black, I think you should travel to Africa. I think you will probably find a lot of your cousins that you didn't even know existed because there are so many similarities. I think one of the biggest things that we must do is tell stories. I heard the YouTubers, I have 8-year-olds and they all want to be YouTubers too. So I love the wisdom that came from the gentleman, about the follow-up questions, because I'm going to do that. But although I don't mind YouTube right now, but I love the follow-up. I actually thought that was brilliant. I do think storytelling, and if you're going to be YouTubers, tell the right stories, right? My kids, we live in Atlanta, but we are from Liberia. They've lived in Liberia. They eat fufu and soup. So they are very much they very much embrace who they are. And I think what's really important is that we have conversations that don't include only the people that understand where we are. So Africans can't talk to Africans, right? Africans must talk to Americans. Americans must talk to African. We must talk to everybody, because even in Africa, we don't understand each other fully, right? So there's a lot of work that we all must do in order to bridge the gap that we say we want to bridge. It's going to take a lot of what needs to happen at home on the continent, as well as here in the US or in other parts of the world, but we have to educate each other. We have to understand that being African is not a monolith. There's different ways African shows up. We have to respect our differences. We have to appreciate our differences. We have to celebrate our differences. We have to understand cultures, because there's a lot of missing information, right? And a lot of times we do not go to find that information. So I am when I think of community, I often think about, how do we go and meet and serving? Because I always say I'm in service to people, right? How do you go and meet people where they are? If we know that certain information is not being passed down or passed through to a specific group of people, and sometimes maybe they're just not ready to receive it because they're navigating the things that you're Black in America today, it's a different thing, right? So what and how and what type of strategies do we need to put in place, and how do we really connect people through engagements like this, as well as storytelling that really connect us in a way we can consume it, we can understand it, and encourage us to want to connect to it. That's honestly what I think, and it's on us to do so, as far as I'm concerned.
So let me jump into an area that I think will excite you, because you have a great deal of experience in that space: women and girls. Do you think that we need to get to the point where we're, as a continent, legislating beyond the rhetoric and actually engineering a space where women and girls in the diaspora would begin to look back home in a way they haven't done yet? And I see you smiling.
Because I actually think women are like the key to...
I like that.
I think more women in leadership positions, right? But both public and private sector, because women lead with community first. And I think it is our mission by birth. It's a birthright to nurture. And we don't show up selfishly, we show up for community. So I am smiling because I 100% believe that the women at the forefront, if we can get more women to play leadership roles, connect and tell stories. Women are mothers by nature. It's just, we can't help it. Whether you have a child or not, you are a mother. And I think the beauty of the young people is a lot of them are unapologetic because they haven't experienced life yet, so they're not thinking about the risks, right? I think about myself, like, what would I say to my 22-year-old self? In fact, I think my 22-year-old self can teach my this-year-old self so much, because back then I didn't think about what would happen if something happened, because now I have children, right? What happens if I make certain decisions because, it will impact my family. Back then, I was just going. I was unapologetic. I was bold. I was unstoppable, which is why you're probably asking me a question today, because somebody thought I did something pretty cool, right? So at the end of the day, I think that the youth, there's so much we can learn from them too, right? We always think we should teach them. And there are certain principles we need to certainly give them, but we need to understand as the world evolves, many of us, while these kids talk about wanting to be YouTubers, we don't even know how to get on YouTube, right? So but that's how the world is consuming content.
Yeah.
So what can we learn from them? But what are the principles that we must teach them? Because I'm Liberian, right? And I always say I was born in Liberia, raised in America with Liberian parents, because it makes a difference for those of us that know African parents. I don't care where you are, if you got that African mother, there are certain things you can and cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot raise your voice. And how you have to be respectful. And by the way, when I say African, I'm talking about global Africa, because that is how it is in the south of the United States as well. Yeah. Right. So again, the similarities. So I 100% believe that more women leading a lot of these different industries, being more at the table, is where we learn to really be inclusive. I had a dinner the other night with Madame Sirleaf, and she is, one of my role models. She's done amazing things. She always talks about why she was such a successful president is because, there was certain traits that come with being a woman that you can't teach. It just comes with us being women as we were born.
I have a final question to you before we come to the front, and then that's because you've been very quiet observing everything. Now, you mentioned the former president of Liberia, Madam Johnson Sirleaf, and I believe you're playing a key role in a documentary about her. Now, my question has to do with the power of storytelling and being a cultural architect. How do we tell a new story about Africa?
How do we tell a new story about Africa? I don't think it's only about telling a new story about Africa. I think we have to tell the real story about Africa, right? Because I think mainstream media tells one story about Africa, but I'm almost convinced that all of us in here have a different African experience than what mainstream media reports or shares. So the real story of Africa, I think, is important to how we get to the new story, because we have African storytellers who are telling stories in Hollywood and Nollywood and Bollywood all over the world. And it doesn't necessarily have to be only stories that resonate with the African lifestyle, but I think the fact that you see a successful filmmaker succeeding in Hollywood, that's an African story within itself. So I think that what needs to be true is we need to get more intentional about telling the real stories of Africa so we can get to the new stories of Africa.
My final question.
You don't ever have a final question. I've heard you say that 500 times.
This final is in caps. Final question. What do you think would be one bold move that Africa must make before 2026?
We need to switch from aid to trade. We need to, I think this moment in time has actually gotten us to where African leaders, African entrepreneurs, and that's globally, are now recognizing that it's going to take us to fix us, right? Yes, we want partnerships. We must have partnerships. I think it's really important. But I think we need to own how people engage with Africans and Africa. We need to make sure that Africa is equal partners or bigger partners in terms of the things that we own, right? Our resources are, some of us are still in different countries, are still negotiating to get things back that was mismanaged or poorly negotiated many years ago in a lot of different countries, right? So I think we really need to understand that, we can't lean on aid so much anymore. We need to look at trade, and we need to look at trade within the continent and figure out how we bring partners along.
Fantastic. Well, and that was the final question. Thank you very much. I think...
And my name is Barku.
Okay.
Barku Tubman, yes.
See, we've all been anglicized to the point where we think we must pronounce everything.
It looks like it should be provocative, but it really is just Barkue. That's
Baku.
it.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much,
Thank
Baku.
you.
And ladies and gentlemen, I think that this has been a very enlightening afternoon. And I'm electing to end with the voice of the future. And that's because we don't hear much from our young people. The Africa Prosperity Dialogues next year, which will be happening on the 4th to the 6th of February in Accra, is about empowering women, SMEs, and the youth so we can, innovate, collaborate, and trade. Jeffrey, I want you to send a message on behalf of all young people, even if they don't agree with everything you say. But what do we need to do between now and the end of the year to amplify your efforts, validate your aspirations, and more importantly, give you the support that you need?
Well, thank you again for giving me the opportunity. There are a plethora of things that we need to do, but I think it starts from where I started off before, just creating the spaces, creating the opportunities for us to open our voices, to share our thinkings, our ideas, because, like Doctor said before, we don't get the opportunities to really share our ideas and be in spaces like these. And I think there's a reason why there aren't many youth in here. So I think it starts off with just giving us spaces to share ideas, and then in that, allowing us to actually network and then connect with other people around us. Like our, the gentleman was saying here, a lot of the youth, they're fearful that, if they come in certain, opportunities like these, they won't get the next, step or the next foot forward. But I think it just starts with, giving us the encouragement that we need. I think that's really what helped me. I was able to have that encouragement. And, not everyone, can really just voice out their opinions unless you kind of reach out to them, if that makes sense. So I think that's what it really starts off with, just giving us the opportunity in spaces like these, maybe doing a space where it's kind of like led by the youth, and then the older generation kind of sits here, and then we have youth panelists that share their ideas as well. So I think that's where it starts off with.
I love that. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And I think this is a fantastic way to draw this Global Africa Forum to a close. We certainly will be back next year. And Brian, I hear your point about maybe bringing the Africa Prosperity Dialogues to America. So we make the story real and accessible to the African-American community and the diaspora as a whole. A lot of things have been said, but I think the final point, and for me, the biggest takeaway from this and from Jeffrey, is that if we really want to go beyond where we are now, we not only have to build capacity and all of those things, what we need to do is to practice a very simple thing that I think started out here in New York. Each one, teach one. And that's something we have to do. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kweku Inshirado, and to all our audiences on the digital platforms and on Asasi, this has been the Global Africa Forum 2025 from Denton's in New York. Goodbye.
We're gonna do a quick team photo, so don't go far, yeah. They're coming now, they're coming now.
Please, 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 don't leave yet. We would like to take a photo, a team photo right here on the stage. All of us, let's come together and take a photograph.